beautiful creation that you have given us to be good stewards, with all that you have blessed us with. So we asked in the name of Jesus that this deliberative body, this Board of Aldermen, and all those who are speaking, come together and do what's right, do what's good for your kingdom here on earth. In Christ's holy name we pray. Amen.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right. Check with Adam and Matthias. Are we good on streaming? Okay, perfect. All right. So what a year it's been. All different kinds of meetings, remote, in person, mixed. And here we are, socially distanced in the courtroom for a public hearing. So I hope everybody who wanted to be in the room could find a seat. And if others come late, as people leave, they can be seated if we run out of seats. And we do have the overflow area in the basement of the library if anyone else would like to come and join us for this meeting. All right, we have many public hearings tonight. When an agenda item is denoted as a public hearing, persons attending shall be permitted to address the Board of Aldermen regarding the item under consideration, those speaking in favor speaking first and those against speaking second. Proponents and opponents shall each be given 20 minutes of time to speak and may choose to allow one speaker to utilize that time or choose to allocate the time among different speakers. In the event that either proponents or opponents have not designated a speaker or speakers to represent that view, the mayor shall divide the 20 minutes by the number of speakers wishing to address the Board of Aldermen, and each such speaker shall be allowed that given time within which to express his or her comments, ideas, concerns, expressions, and desires. After the opponents speak, the mayor will allow the proponents 5 minutes for a rebuttal. If the proponents choose to exercise this option, the opponents will also have 5 minutes for rebuttal. In the event that the proponents do not present a rebuttal, then the opponents shall be given no further time to speak. Many of the meetings this year have been remote. That means one or more of the aldermen or myself have been in a different room than this room. And under the enabling legislation for state law that allows for a remote meeting for a municipality, there was a waiting period after the public hearing before the vote could take place. Given that we're all here, this is a traditional meeting or live meeting, the votes can take place tonight. Okay, so as you came in, I think the town clerk greeted you and got speaker cards, but if there's anyone else who'd like to speak on any of the public hearing items or public session items, let our town clerk know. This is Keith Hook, our town clerk. Is there anywhere they sign up, Keith?
Everyone has signed up and you have a call.
Okay, perfect. All right, so indicate if you didn't sign in on a public speaker card. If you'd like to speak at the time of the public hearing, I'll call for speakers and you'll have an opportunity to speak. Okay, so we've got public hearings 1A, a public hearing on a Kernersville development plan, and 1B, and we'll consider them together we'll hold a combined public hearing for those two matters. We'll have a combined presentation by our community development staff, but there will be two separate votes taken. So item 1A is a public hearing, Kernersville development plan. It's listed in detail on the agenda, but it's a consideration of an amendment to the Kernersville development plan to amend the land use plan from office and high density residential to mixed use for properties located at the southern terminus of Salisbury Street at Salem Parkway. And it's listed as zoning docket KDP 55. And then A1 is consideration of a resolution amending the Kernersville development plan. Item 1B is another public hearing, a rezoning, where petitioner requests a single-phase conditional use rezoning from PBS to RMUC, residential multifamily unrestricted conditional use, for property located at 904 Salisbury Street, containing a total of 3.19 plus or minus acres. Zoning Docket K-786. A1. I'd like to make sure all of the aldermen can hear me properly. We had an issue at our last meeting. Chris, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Bruce and Joe, can you hear me okay? Okay. Audience, is there anyone can y'all hear me? Thumbs up. All right, perfect. Okay. All right, so we'll begin this evening with the presentation. Mr. Jeff Hatling.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. As the mayor described, this first public hearing is regarding a land use plan that's associated with the following public hearing for K-518A1. The land use plan amendment is for 7 parcels just south of Salem Parkway along Salisbury. Rezoning case 518 proposed an elderly apartment along Salisbury. The site currently sits in the land use plan designated as office area. The site was rezoned in 1998 for office uses. Since that time, the office market in Kernersville has shifted to other areas in Kernersville. Staff is recommending not only the elderly apartment site land use designation change, but all the parcels around the intersection of Salisbury Street and Lindsay Street. That area currently has a mix of uses: childcare, church, single family, multifamily, office, and vacant parcel. To reflect the current mix of uses and promote redevelopment of the area, staff is recommending land use designation of mixed use. Staff recommendation: approval of the resolution in the staff report designating the proposed mixed use node with the following description. Salisbury Street, Lindsay Street. The mixed use designation is to promote development or redevelopment of the area to office, services, small retail, and multifamily. The planning board recommendation regarding land use plan, motion by Margaret Burks to recommend approval of the land use plan amendment as presented by staff, seconded by Chris Oakman, motion carried 9-0. So that's on the land use plan. Regarding the rezoning case, as the mayor described, this is a rezoning case from pedestrian business special use to RMUC, residential multifamily unrestricted conditional use district. The original application had residential building multifamily. During the initial review with the DRC, it was determined that we need to go with residential building urban because of height difference. I'll discuss that in a little bit. Acreage is 3.19, 70 units at a density of 21.9 units per acre. The site plan is a 4-story building served with an elevator, 70 units, density of 21.9. The amenities would include the indoor would include elevators, community room, training, computer room, exercise room, library, and a shared laundry facility. Outdoor would include recreation space with walking path, patios, and pavilion. There is one overlay district modification for the street yard modification to a 10-foot street yard with a 4-foot masonry wall along the front that allows them to reduce the street yard from a 22-foot, 3-foot berm down to a 10-foot with that masonry wall. The building elevation as a residential structure, the design elements are reviewed under the central Kernersville overlay districts, which require a combination of following design elements. To the right is the illustration. There'd be more detail during the building permit submittal, but you would have hip and gable roofs with a pitch of 412 to 1212. The windows, window sills, lintels, small window panes, window trim that incorporates the use of decorative shutters, heads, aprons, or cornices. Entrances, the porch for the front entrance, or you can see they have a front entrance area, the panel doors. So basically at the time of submittal, you have much more design features incorporated in the illustration provided to the right. And of course, brick facade foundation on the trim on the bottom. Regarding the use, as I discussed, original submittal had a 3-story apartment with the use residential building multifamily. During the development review committee, the DRC review, was determined a 4-story building would better fit the site. Staff and the planning board are recommending the use be changed from residential building multifamily, which does not allow for a 4-story building, to residential building urban to allow for the 4-story building. Regarding land use and thoroughfare, as proposed, land use plan would need to be amended to accommodate multifamily residential project as the area is proposed for office currently. Concurrently with this application, there's a proposed amendment that I just covered. Based on the fact this proposed project will have a low traffic volume during non-peak hours, NCDOT is not recommending any road improvements to Salisbury Street. The planning board did recommend turn lanes if warranted by NCDOT. Staff met with NCDOT and they stated that the traffic generation of this project does not warrant turn lanes. They also noted the parcel is in the transition area heading north on Salisbury Street from a 45 down to a 35, thus lowering the risk of traffic accidents. The staff analysis, the proposed elderly housing will help meet the growing demand for that segment of our population. It is estimated that the elderly population will more than double over the next 40 years. The proposed building is taller than the surrounding properties, but the area is largely transitional area between the numerous uses ranging from single-family residential, office, church, the cell tower, town of Kernersville South Tower right at the intersection, multifamily and manufactured housing. Staff recommendation regarding rezoning, move to amend the zoning ordinance of town by rezoning the property in case K518A1 from PBS to RMUC. The said rezoning be consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and further being both reasonable and the public interest due to the following facts. The petitioner requests a conditional use district rezoning allowing for modification of the street yard requirements along Salisbury Street. The modification ensures the development addresses the development plan goal of establishing Kernersville as a unique high-quality community within a triad, but providing design alternatives similar to an effect as required by the UDO. Petitioner requests a conditional use district rezoning allowing a specific site plan to be considered to address the unique character of the area and to ensure the adjacent property owners are not negatively affected by the design and placement of development on the site. There is a demand for multifamily housing, specifically those targeted to senior adults, to keep pace with the changing demographics. Regarding the site plan, approval of the site plan and conditions as presented in the staff report. The planning board recommendation regarding rezoning, motion made by Margaret Burks to recommend approval of the rezoning as presented by staff, second by Tom Daniel, motion carried 9-0. Regarding the site plan, made by Margaret Burks to recommend approval of the site plan as presented by staff with a recommendation to put turn lanes on Salisbury Street with NCDOT approval, seconded by Nathan Myers. The vote was 9-0. There was no public opposition at the planning board public hearing. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do the aldermen have any questions of staff at this time? Okay, this is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on, well, I have some cards, but if there's anyone who'd like to speak on 1A, I do not have any cards on 1A. I have some cards on 1B. If there's anyone else who'd like to speak on it, if there's time, I will recognize you. I have signed up to speak Steve Sorenka, Doug Jones, Steve Boone, and Ray Krovick. Mr. Sorenka?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Steve Sorenka. Give you my address.
Yes, please.
4210 Sweetgum Crossing, Charleston, South Carolina. And I am here on behalf of agent for the owner and worked with the city, Jeff Hatling and his staff for several months, working through all the conditions and what they had asked for. And, you know, we think that we put together an excellent plan, fits the site very well. Jeff mentioned all the amenities, so we're really excited to bring this forward. If Doug wants to speak next, he's the site engineer, can talk a little bit about what they did with their design.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Madam Mayor, if it pleases you, I'd like to devote the rest of my time to the other partner we have with this thing, and it would be available later only to answer specific questions, if that's okay.
That's fine. Mr. Boone?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Steve Boone. I'm the president of Buckeye Community Hope Foundation. We're a not-for-profit housing developer headquartered in Columbus, Ohio. I thought I would read, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the low-income housing tax credit program, but that's the.
We're happy to hear it. If you could state your address for
I
our town clerk.
apologize.
No problem.
723 Bounty Square Drive, Charleston, South Carolina, 29492.
Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, I'm just going to be brief in reading a market study that was commissioned by the North Carolina Housing Authority. And they're basically pointing out that in this market study that 40.59% of senior citizens, 55 and older, in the Kernersville area are paying more than 35% of their income towards housing, which means they're overburdened. That's kind of a cutoff. People, they target 35% towards rent, utilities, and everything else like that. So I think that's important. There's currently 1,123 senior citizens that are eligible to live in this apartment project, and we only have 70. So that's a capture rate of extremely low capture rate of 6.23%. So there is a lot of Kernersville citizens that would love to live here. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Krovic? If you could start with restating your name and your address for our clerk.
Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. I had a 30-minute oratory here for you. Jeff and his staff have done such a good job quoting facts and figures, he's left me speechless almost. That's pretty hard to do, Jeff, but that was a very good presentation. He gave you the facts and figures of the need of this project. We've been trying to get something like this for a long time. We've got it. Let Kernersville have it. We ask that you vote unanimous for this, and we do thank you for your time and your support.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone here in opposition? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Is there discussion or motion? And we will be voting separately on 1A, Zoning Docket K-55, and 1B, Zoning Docket K-518A1.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for approval of the rezoning 1A.
Okay, so the Kernersville Development Plan. Okay, Jeff, if you can put that motion up. All right, so Mr. Pinnix's motion is a motion to approve the land use plan amendment as presented by staff and the amendment to the Kernersville Development Plan.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Mr. Hooker, did you get the motion and second?
Yes, thank you.
All right, the next item then for vote or discussion is 1B, the rezoning. Zoning Docket K-518A1. Mr. Hatling, if you could put the recommended motion up. Is there any discussion? Alderman Pinnix, do you have another motion?
Yes, I'd like to make approval for zoning docket K-518A1.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. Motion for approval of the rezoning in the wording recommended by staff and of the site plan and conditions as presented by the staff report. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Mr. Hooker, did you get the vote? Very good. All right. Congratulations. And when will we expect this project to start? Because it sounds like we really, really need it.
Well, yeah, it is needed, and if we're lucky enough to get an award of credits, we'll find out somewhere August, September range.
Okay.
I think we're going to need probably 8 months to do everything you guys would like us to do and get started.
Thank you.
All right? Thanks again, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, we are to item 1C. It's a public hearing on the Kernersville Development Plan. It's for the consideration of an amendment to the Kernersville Development Plan to amend the land use plan for properties located at 1020 North Main Street regarding the maximum size of retail space and changing the land use designation from low density residential to commercial neighborhood. Zoning Docket K-786. We'll begin with the presentation by our Community Development Director, Jeff Hatling.
Thank you, Morgan. As the mayor described, this is associated with an earlier rezoning K-784. Purpose of this amendment, the mayor and the Board of Aldermen approved a rezoning case that did not conform to the land use plan, which is allowed in North Carolina. When a zoning map amendment is approved that is not consistent with the land use plan map, the future land use map is deemed amended with an inconsistent zoning when it is inconsistent with the rezoning approval. The land use plan amendment, this land use plan amendment is a formal amendment to reflect the changes adopted in the rezoning. Staff recommendation, approval of the resolution in the staff report to recommend a 35,929 square foot grocery store and change the land use designation for parcel 6886994736 from low density residential to commercial neighborhood. The planning board recommendation, a motion made by Steve Hutchins to recommend approval of the land use plan amendment as presented by staff, second by Margaret Burke. Motion was 9-0. There was no public opposition. Be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions by the alderman at this point in time? All right. There is no one who signed up to speak on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor who's in the audience today? Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Alderman Thompson. Do I have a second? Second by Alderman Crews. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, that brings us to item 1D. It's a public hearing on rezoning. Petitioner requesting a single-phase conditional use rezoning from RS20 to RS12C PRD, residential single-family conditional use for property located at 9431 County Line Road, containing a total of 36.13 plus or minus acres. Requested uses, residential building, single family, and planned residential development. Zoning Docket K-786. We'll begin with a presentation by our community development staff. I'll recognize Community Development Director Jeff Hatling.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. As described, this is a rezoning from RS20 to RS12 as a planned residential development, the PRD. 36 acres, 105 lots, 2.9 units per acre. Planned residential development under the Unified Development Ordinance. Within the ordinance, it states planned residential development, a PRD, is intended to encourage development of living environments which meets the needs of the people who live in them by providing certain development privileges in exchange for pre-planning and design consideration, and to allow development flexibility and environmentally sensitive design, which promotes the conservation of open space. To the right is the illustration of the layout of the planned residential development. You can see in the middle area where there's some blue, that's some wetlands, the streams, and so this PRD is a classic PRD designed around some environmentally sensitive areas, but at the same time to allow for a living environment for future residents. 105 single-family detached homes are clustered around the environmentally sensitive areas. Low-impact stormwater measures are used to reduce the rate of stormwater runoff. A homeowner association will maintain the common areas and the amenities, which include a tot lot play area, community garden, dog park, gathering area, and primitive hiking and mountain bike trails. The homes will be served with public water and a private sewer system that pumps to a public sewer. So the sewer will be treated publicly. The Board of Aldermen approved a similar PRD in 2019 to Courtyard Harmon Mill with a private sewer pump station and private streets. We're starting to see, we'll see more and more of this over time. Matter of fact, we're working on another potential residential development that will use a pump station because we're reaching the edge of our sewer basins. And so when you reach that edge, on the other side of that hill, if you have another development, you have to pump up to the public sewer. So we're seeing more and more of these private systems as we expand out to our limits of our sewered area. Regarding the PRD, to provide buffering between the proposed neighborhood and existing homes, at a minimum of 30-foot type 2 buffer yard is required. Also, additional open space has been provided along some of the perimeter. Residential development regarding the single-family homes, as submitted, a typical building design shall include a traditional stylistic architectural features and include a combination of the following: material, hardy plank type siding with brick or rock accent materials in the front facade. Roofs be hip or gable. Windows, window trims that incorporate the use of decorative shutters, heads, aprons, and cornices. Entrances that are well-defined, stylistic front entrances with panel doors. Garage doors, panel doors with frame decorative trim, and a trim with a distinct trim incorporated. As advised by legal staff in the past, when a developer submits a building elevation, staff then writes up more of a description that would be an actual condition. Regarding the land use definition of this area for low density residential, the town has identified that one of its unique high quality components is residential areas that are predominantly single family residential. The larger single family designated area, the greater supply of available land, which assists in supporting a greater price range of single family homes. The low density single family residential has been the primary land use in Kernersville. However, rising housing costs and small household sizes causing a greater demand for higher density residential. Lower density estates in the plan shall have a density of 0.3 units per acre unless the area is a lower density than 0.2 units per acre shall be considered. So this is, you can see the site here in our land use plan. The surrounding area is a mix of residential types and densities ranging from single family residential to manufactured housing to multifamily. The directly adjacent single-family residential was constructed prior to public sewer being available. Thus, the property zone RS20 and has a density of greater than 2 units per acre. The proposed RS12 zoning and other higher density districts are used for areas with sewer. With the sewer being expanded to this area, it is not only supporting additional density, it's also attracting the new grocery store that recently approved at North Main Street at County Line Road, promoting further urbanization of this area. Regarding transportation, NCDOT threshold for considering and requiring turn lanes is an annual average traffic of 4,000 trips per day or more. 2019 NCDOT count, which is the most recent count, is 3,400 on County Line Road. NCDOT has requested that at each phase of construction, as each phase of construction begins, a revised driveway permit be issued in order to determine when the threshold may be crossed for considering a need for turn lanes. And so if the project is built out prior to more than 4,000 trips per day, there would be no turn lanes on County Line Road. That's a state standard for NCDOT. Anything below 4,000, you do not see road improvements. The planning board did recommend turn lanes if warranted by NCDOT. Once again, staff met with NCDOT and they restated that for NCDOT to consider turn lanes, roads need to be over 4,000 vehicles per day. Regarding stormwater, this is in the Reedy Fork area, which is in the Jordan Lake watershed, and the project is subject to Jordan riparian buffer rules. Deborah Lane, Eden Bridge, Eden Terrace were the first suburban neighborhoods built in the upper end of this watershed, as illustrated on the drawing to your right, along with Swain Sports Complex that was developed and the First Christian Church. And so There's also our recently approved Drummond Estates. And so you can see this upper end of this watershed is being slowly built out with the earlier subdivisions of Deborah, Eden Bridge, and Eden Terrace. The proposed development will be utilizing the low-density stormwater development option. The low-density stormwater projects are limited either no more than 24% built-upon area or 2 dwelling units per acre. Both low-density options of 24% built-upon area for 2 dwelling units per or 2 dwelling units per acre are recognized methods of minimizing stormwater impact of development, and both meet the state and local requirements. This proposed project is a low density because it will remain below 24% built upon area. It's coming in at roughly 23.58% coverage. Also, by using the PRD standards, 47.4% plus or minus will remain in open space outside of the residential lots. Further, on stormwater, low density projects are not required to be equipped with a stormwater pond. They are required to disperse the stormwater flow and ensure that the stormwater conveyance are vegetative. Also, a minimum amount of piping for driveways or culverts on the road are required. Developer recommended replacing a pipe at the end of Deborah Lane that is on the land that's illustrated right here with the red. That pipe is on the developer's land and also the adjacent property. During the last public hearing, the adjacent property owner testified that they did not want the pipe replaced. The developer has agreed not to replace the pipe. So that's just a clarification. On the site plan, it says there's a recommended culvert change, but the property owner on one side wishes not to be changed. The developer has agreed to that. Further on the stormwater, photos were submitted of the accessory buildings located at 4603 Eden Bridge Drive and the Eden Bridge culvert. When Eden Bridge Drive was designed and constructed, the culvert was sized for a design storm to address a certain amount of rainfall. Once that design storm capacity is reached, it backs up and the stormwater can overtop the stream banks into the adjacent properties. And so pretty much the common design, you can only build a culvert so big, and after certain storm events, naturally it'll back up. The illustration of the garage and the other accessory building, locating those buildings in areas where stormwater could overtop the stream bank is not advisable. Staff analysis regarding density. The proposed 105 homes keep the project under the land use plan recommendation of a density of 3 units per acre. It's coming in at roughly 2.9 units per acre. The adjacent RS20 properties, with the exception of First Christian Church, are not served by public sewer and are allowed a density of just over 2 units per acre because they've been septics. Currently in the northeast area of Kernersville, the area served by sewer have a much higher density, including high density residential multifamily. Based on the fact that this parcel is part of the area served by sewer, the lower density residential scale of 0 to 3 units per acre would apply. Staff regarding the buffering, the PRD has a 30-foot type 2 buffer surrounding the development as described earlier. In addition to the buffers, in some areas additional open space is provided. It's important to note that conventional subdivision would not require any open space or buffer yards to adjacent properties. Regarding the house analysis, a conventional subdivision would not be required any standards on house design or materials. The PRD would have a rezoning condition requiring what was submitted be followed, which includes traditional stylistic architectural features with a hardy plank type siding, brick, or rock accent materials. Staff analysis regarding access. The direct access to the site is planned on County Line Road. Since the streets will be private, the Deborah Lane connection can be emergency access only. Early on, some residents of Deborah Lane were concerned about traffic being used for Deborah Lane, but since it's private streets, we just have emergency access off Deborah Lane. If a conventional subdivision proposed public streets, NCDOT require the access development be off Deborah Lane with no new access off County Line Road. Staff analysis regarding stormwater. A conventional subdivision would not include the planned open space. The required open space helps address the rate of runoff of stormwater. Also, a homeowner association will be required to protect environmentally sensitive areas. Fourthly, the proposed 24% or less impervious coverage in a homeowner association required to maintain a common area in compliance with the watershed and stormwater regulations will assist in minimizing the stormwater runoff. Staff recommendation, approval of the following motion. Move to amend the Unified Development Ordinance of the town by rezoning the property in case K-786 from RS20 to RS12C PRD, the said rezoning being consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, the Kernersville Development Plan, and further being both reasonable and public interest because of the following facts. The petitioner requested a conditional use district rezoning, allowing building architectural standards to be applied. This ensures the development addresses the development goal of establishing Kernersville as a unique high-quality community within a triad. The petitioner requests conditional use rezoning allowing consideration of a specific site plan to address the unique character of the area, to allow for appropriate buffering to adjacent properties, restrict access to Deborah Lane, to emergency service only, and to minimize the stormwater runoff. Regarding site plan, approval of the site plan and conditions is presented in the staff report. The planning board recommendation, motion was made by Margaret Burke to recommend approval of the rezoning as presented by staff, second by Nathan Myers. Motion carried with a motion was denied with a 4-5 denial. 4 were Jim Waddell, Margaret Burks, Tom McDaniel, Nathan Myers. Against, Joseph Ornstein, Diane Byers, Steve Hutchins, Luann Davis, Chris Oakman. So the motion was made for approval, but it only received 4 of the 9 votes. Regarding our site plan, motion made by Tom McDaniel to recommend approval of the site plan as presented by staff for the recommendations to move the pump station to the north of the creek and turn lanes on County Line Road be in place upon approval of NCD DOT, seconded by Steve Hutchins. The vote was 8-1. Motion approved. Be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions at this time?
I've got a couple. When will the next official count be for County Line Road intersection? I know the last one was 2019.
Yeah, so currently, they're currently doing the counts now in 2021. And but the counts probably won't be available until late 2022 or 2023.
Okay. And in a private road situation, who arranges for and bears the cost of any expense of clearing the road, of snow, and any repairs to the road?
The homeowner association.
Okay, and then my third question was, in a private sewer pump situation, I understand it's going to a public sewer, but with a private pump, if there's a malfunction in the pump, who bears the cost of any repairs to that?
The homeowner association.
Okay. And are those potential significant costs, or are they those two, the road maintenance and the pump maintenance, are they likely to be expensive? A 105 home subdivision, would that be a major expense for them?
For pump replacement?
If they had to replace the pump or repair the pump?
Any homeowner association, would budget for capital improvements. One would be eventually you're going to replace the pump, street repairs. So yes, the homeowner association would have to properly budget for those items. But as mentioned before, as the area builds out, we're going to see more and more of these type of pump stations. Like we just recently approved the courtyard at Harmon Mill, because there's such a demand for housing, and of course with the increased cost, of course increased housing costs also. So this won't be an affordable housing project.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
What's the situation now?
Use your mic, Kenny.
Where the sewer pump is placed within accordance with the creek.
Yeah, it was noted during the public hearing that on the site plan, the pump is located on the south side of the creek, right across the street from a house on Deborah Lane. And so the planning board and staff supports just moving the pump station to the north side so that pump station isn't just directly across the street from a house.
Okay, ma'am. So moving the pump stations at the moving the pump station, the developer's gonna bear that cost, or is that gonna be homeowners in the beginning?
Well, it's not, it's only designed, so there's no cost associated with it.
Okay, and then, give me a ballpark, what a replacing a pump station cost.
I would have to have the applicant.
So nobody knows? Would anybody else know? Curtis? Okay, okay, well, I'll hold that question. I'll hold my other questions till later. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. There are a lot of people signed up to speak for this public hearing. We do have time limits that have been established for a public hearing. So each side has 20 minutes. If as you speak, you don't need the whole 20 minutes, I'll see if there's others in the audience who didn't sign up to speak, who want to speak, or if you spoke earlier, you can, use that time also. So be cognizant that the clock will run down, and that's the amount of time for the public hearing. So I have 2 people signed up to speak in favor. I have 6 signed up to speak in opposition. Dividing the 20 minutes, it gives you just under 3.5 minutes to speak on the side of the opposition. All right, so we'll begin with the proponents. And again, this is the public hearing zoning docket K-786. I have Bill Greco and Mark Smith signed up to speak. If you could state your name and address, it can be your business address for the town clerk as you begin. If you exceed time, Alderman Boyer is keeping the clock. He'll call time. And the time runs down there. And that's it's at the podium as well. All right. Please proceed.
Good evening. My name is Bill Greco. My office is located at 200 South Regional Road in Greensboro. Speaking tonight as agent for the applicant and landowner, part of the development team working on this project. We have been working on this project for several months. It was on the docket and withdrawn at a certain point, but it's back. It's been a journey to get here. Certainly like to thank Mr. Hatling, his whole department. Chris Jensen and the engineering has been extremely helpful. And the plan that you see this evening is one that's had some tweaks and some adjustments and things noted and changed, primarily due to input from neighbors, input from staff. Certainly with any rezoning of this nature, you can't accommodate everyone's request, but we certainly have done our best to try and work with our surrounding neighbors. So thanks to those neighbors that have been supportive. The fun part about these hearings is I do these at a lot of places in a lot of jurisdictions, and Mr. Hatling and his staff do such a good job on the technical merits of the application, how it meets the land use plan, how it meets the development plan, how the standards are applied, that it really leaves little to discuss on those subjects. We certainly do believe that the PRD is an excellent choice for this property due to the open space, the buffers, the architectural standards, all the things that Mr. Hatling has gone through here this evening, those types of protections and enforceable things that are in place when it comes to the housing types, the buffer yards, so forth and so on. Also with this application, we are not requesting any type of variance or waiver or density bonus. We're actually coming in a little under what the maximum density could be with this zoning request. We're slightly below that. With our planning board meeting and recommendations, I will say it was a good meeting. It went on. I do feel like we got a little off topic and strayed from what the land use plan recommends, what the Kernersville development plan recommends. And with regards to the pump station on this property, our engineering component of our team has located that pump station in the place where it's most supported by gravity. We could put it anywhere on the property, but gravity is how the sewer gets to the pump station. Once it's in this pump station, it's pumped obviously to the gravity main. So that location is very carefully chosen by our engineering team. I don't recommend we change that location. The site plan approval by the planning board, again, I think reflects in its entirety the fact that technically on its merits, this plan does meet the land use plan. It does meet all the applicable ordinances, and it meets and exceeds, frankly. Some of our issues that we've had with our neighbors, such as traffic, Mr. Hatling has touched on that. Certainly DOT is in charge of that part of the project. If they require a turn lane based on the trips generated, so forth, so on, we'll certainly be putting one in at a certain point. If the traffic counts don't warrant a turn lane, frankly, DOT doesn't approve you to put that in. They don't want to maintain anything that's not required. Very similar, I'm sure, to the town of Kernersville. So the traffic and the turn lane situation is entirely DOT's purview. With regards to flooding and stormwater, potential flooding, culvert replacements, again, we've tried to reach out and work with folks and explain things on that, but I'll just refer right back to the staff report. The low density measures that we have in place, the design components that we have in place that are approved on this site plan, we've gone above and beyond to do everything we can to address those topics. With that said, if you have any questions on the technical merits of the plans, I'll be happy to address those. If not, Mr. Smith is here to speak in favor as well.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Hey, thank you. Mark Smith, 5932 Tarleton Drive, Oak Ridge. I'd like to give your staff a grade A too. I've done multiple projects in Kernersville. 20 years ago, I think we did the backside of Salisbury Crossing and built some nice patio homes there. That was 20 years ago. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I remember most of you were here. We did Davis Gardens Apartments, which was some senior apartments that are 98% full and been great for seniors through the COVID process. So we've been here a while doing this stuff. I'll try to answer some of the technical questions. And I'll try to let you guys have some time to ask me some questions. On the sewer specific, I read the article and I talked to some of you in the paper about high expense costs of HOA. So today with these heavy rains, we've made 2 sewer septic repairs on homes with septic systems. This land and that surrounding area is, I would rate it as about a C or a C minus for septics, which require a block panel or a more expensive septic system. That means we're spending between these days $500 and $7,500 per home. At 100 homes, that's $700,000 to $800,000 worth of septic systems. A high quality sewer pump that's quiet, works well, and has a 25-year life, has a monitoring company, professional company that looks after it and is monitored by the state of North Carolina with a backup generator, is about $250,000. Substantially cheaper than individual septic systems, a lot less likely to fail. So this land was available for 2 years. And when we did find a way to septic it, it is at the very reaches of your septic line for Forsyth County. So I guess I would like to ask you, what questions do you have of us before I can address anything else?
We'll hold the questions to the end. Do you have anything further to present?
I think the biggest thing is, I heard a lot about community outreach. We've been doing this for 30 years. We met Miss Ritter, who lives in the property. Right at the corner, she's surrounded by 3 sides. We took her to coffee, showed her what we were doing, said we'd love to work with you guys. We'd love to talk to some neighbors. And a lot of times this happens, but those neighbors then take your information and build a defense against you. I'm used to that. I got thick skin. We can take it. I understand. There's people hunting on the land. There's deer stands on the land. People walk their dogs on the land. I get it. I really do. But it's our land, and we would like to develop it, and we'd like to provide a high-quality product, and we would do everything we can to work with our neighbors. So we made great efforts to talk to them and build relationships. Sometimes it went well, sometimes it did not. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of the development? If not, we'll hear from opponents. if you'd like to, there's seats in the front of the room and along this side. All right, we have again Randall Reidler, Peggy Watson-Smith, Art Martz, Jim Pinkerton, Dave Tomas, and David Hatch. So you can remain seated until I call you. You're fine, Randall. You can remain seated and we'll stop the clock for transitions between speakers. All right, and again, you have just under 3.5 minutes per speaker. If you take less time, then we can circle back to someone who spoke earlier. Okay, Ms. Reidler. And again, I'm so sorry, we won't start the clock yet. If you could restate your name and address, everybody, for the clerk.
My name is Randall Reidler. I live at 1255 Deborah Lane in Kernersville. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today. I would like to speak on behalf of those who could not make it here today, those I spoke with while collecting the signatures for the petition against the rezoning and development at 9431 County Line Road. I heard the same legitimate objections to the rezoning over and over. I saw the remnants of what flooding has caused in my neighbors' yards. I heard stories of worsening flooding since developments have been built on the surrounding farmland. I listened to complaints about traffic and how it hasn't improved since the traffic light was installed at County Line Road and Highway 150. I also listened to the reasons why my neighbors moved to Kernersville and live in North Kernersville. For the country feel, the space around each home, tranquility, and privacy. These were also the reasons I moved to North Kernersville and why I fell in love with this side of town. The land use plan has 9431 County Line Road and the surrounding area zoned low-density residential. It defines low-density residential as 0 to 3 units per acre. However, if the surrounding area is less dense, then 0 to 2 units per acre shall be considered. Currently, the density surrounding 9431 County Line Road is 0.8 units per acre. Rezoning this piece of land for the proposed development will make the density of that plot 3 units per acre, which does not fit the surrounding neighborhood or the land use plan's definitions. There's no reason this piece of land cannot be developed as RS20, just like so many other plots of land in the surrounding area. Eden Bridge, Chelsea Place, Greenbrier, Bakersfield, that's way further down, and even Stonehaven, which is the most recent one to be passed. I have personally met with the developer, and unfortunately, he has not listened to any of my personal complaints or my neighbors' objections to his plans. He's not contacted any of the neighbors who are experiencing flooding. The only reason he changed his initial plan was because he planned to build houses on federally regulated land. He did address the flooding in his current plan by proposing to replace that culvert at the end of Deborah Lane with one that's 3 times larger than the one that's currently there. And that will only worsen the flooding that we're seeing downstream. In comparison, Stonehaven's developer has personally worked with neighbors in Chelsea Place by agreeing to build retention ponds in the new development to possibly improve, but at least not exacerbate, their current flooding problems. He's shown respect for the surrounding neighborhood's residents by listening to their concerns and addressing problems in an appropriate manner. This proposed rezoning and development does not follow the land use plan, and none of the objections from the surrounding neighborhood have been addressed in a proper manner. These, among the other complaints you'll be hearing tonight, are reasons to vote no to the rezoning and development of 9431 County Line Road. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next I have Peggy Watson-Smith.
Good evening. My name is Peggy Watson-Smith. I live at the end of Deborah Lane, where the problem of the issue of the water is consistent. There's always, I took pictures of yesterday of how the flooding will be consistently. Within 30 minutes time, it went from 0 to ponds to like rivers. Will continue. That erosion will continue. When I moved there 47 years ago, there was a stream I did not have a lake or water or anything on my property. And with the erosion and everything that's occurred since then, I now have a creek on my land, and it overflows every time we have a big rain into my property. The deepest where the culvert is that comes in from Deborah Lane onto my land, the pressure from the water has created a deep consistency of 3 to 4 foot deep, and not a stream that was there 47 years ago. When I moved there, I had to build my house on an acre of land because of being in the watershed. That is not the way it is today. All the surrounding area is still under watershed, and that has not changed. The traffic is going to be horrendous because there's 3 developments within 1 to 2/10 of a mile, and plus the ball field traffic. And that's going to be horrendous. And now, even if there's a ball game that we can't even hardly get into our Deborah Lane from County Line Road from just whenever they have a ball game. As far as the building of 105 houses on this land, there is not a level place on this land. It all goes downhill, either knolls or downhill into the creek. I've been over that land over several years past, and there's not a level place on this land that a house can be built without it going downhill toward the creek. If you add the cement and asphalt, the water's going to flow that much faster. And I mean, I guess I'll have to live on a lake. I don't want it to be like Branchwood or Cord John or Broken Saddle. And that's what it's going to be if I end up continuing having the problem with the overflow of water into my yard. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, Arts.
My name is Arthur Martz. I live at 4600 Eden Bridge Drive. That is just the other side of the Swim Little League Park from this development. I share the same concerns as a number of our other speakers about traffic in the area, the effect this development would have on our property values, and the quality of life in our area. However, I share an additional concern with the speaker that spoke just before me. Little Beaver Creek flows through my property, right next to my driveway. And I also have severe flooding problems periodically. Ever since, I believe it was the Drummond development that was listed on that chart that was up there, I will get a creek that goes from 4 inches to sometimes 5 to 6 feet deep, overflowing banks. I've had my well flooded more than once. I've had my swimming pool flooded that is a good 5-6 feet above the upper bank of the creeks. The stream will overflow its banks, depending on weather, of course, sometimes monthly, potentially more often than that. And this is with just the current developments that are there. And again, I would point specifically at Drummond Estate, I believe is what was referenced on that. And I believe that goes through a retention pond already. And now you're talking about adding another development on top of that that doesn't even have a retention pond. This 25% figure that you quoted as being adequate for low density stormwater runoff, I'll reject that totally out of hand. We can't handle what we've got now, let alone add more on top of it. I've already got, I'm bringing in a dump load truck of riprap to try and rebuild part of the banks along that creek that are already eroding towards my driveway and towards the neighbor on the other side to try and build the banks back up from the damage that's already been done from the flooding. Your staff showed some pictures from my neighbor across the street with some flooding, some high water marks. Those were nothing. I could show you on my phone here much more dramatic pictures. And when I'm talking 5-6 foot deep, I'm not talking a pond or a lake. I'm talking rushing water that'll take out everything in its path. And now I've got a development with no storm pond and very little consideration for storm runoff that I can see that's going to add on top of this. Who's going to pay for the damage to my property from this? Who's going to reimburse me for what I'm having to pay now? And you're going to add more on top of this? So no, I'm very much against this development as it stands now. I believe that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jim Pinkerton.
Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. My name is Jim Pinkerton, and I live at 9481 County Line Road. This is right at the corner of the property that's in question here. So I want to say that my association with Kernersville began 40 years ago when I sent my newlywed wife down to the Kernersville Truck Driver Training School, and she was trained in your University of Higher Education here. And we drove truck around the country for a few years. My trucking career turned into an aviation career, and then I found myself at the PTIA airport in aircraft maintenance. So there I was when I came here 40 years ago and picked up my wife at the school. I'm looking around and I'm thinking, man, I never want to live at a place like this. Yeah, I was from the mountains up in Virginia. But then 20 years later, there I was buying a house right there on County Line Road. And it was a great place. I'm surrounded by woods. It's peaceful and quiet. I knew when I bought the property that it wouldn't always be like that. Of course, you know, progress happens. But there it was 20 years, now it's 40 years from that, or you know, it's 20 years later today, we're talking about developing it. At that time, I thought, well, maybe there'd be something like an Eden Bridge coming. That would suit the area. That would be reasonable. So be it. You know, I got to live with it. But then, lo and behold, now we're talking about this type of a development with 105 homes crammed into 36 acres. And I talked to David Pyler with the Board of Commissioners of Forsyth County. And I said to him, David, how can this even happen? You know, this land isn't even Kernersville land. They're going to make it Kernersville land. And he explained to me the ETJ, which everybody here I know knows about, and that the towns can take over land if they voted in and so forth. Well, you know, I know that's legal, but is that morally responsible when you have 168 citizens sign a petition opposing it for these reasons and other reasons? And I appreciate the questions that were made about the sewer system. I'll give you firsthand experience about the sewer system. But there's one at the church property right now. That's one church. There's not 105 homes, there's one church, and they're always down there working on that pumping station. I smell it. So it's not just an easy thing just to say you're going to put a sewer station in. I appreciate those questions. So anyway, back to the point, when the development was first proposed and the plans were drawn up, and we all got together in the community and spoke out against it, well, good. You know, the plans were supposedly listened to. They were redrawn, they were replanned, and we had a concern about the 105 homes not fitting in the area. So, you know, we thought, okay, we're going to be listened to. So now the new plan came out. I looked at it. I thought, whoa, it's the same plan, 105 homes. So now I'm against it. I'm totally against it now, and I ask each of you Board of Aldermen to give it a no vote, and I appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dave Tomas.
Hello, my name is David Toomis. I live at 4600 Eden Terrace Drive in Kernersville here. I moved to Kernersville due to the rural charm of this area, and I really like the north end of Kernersville here. I am firsthand witness to the flooding that goes on there. I'm constantly helping my neighbors when they have the flooding issues. Dr. Phillips, who lives a little bit further down County Line Road there, his property is back there along Beaver Creek. That constantly floods. And my son, when he was younger, he was going down there and taking a four-wheeler and wakeboards, and he was actually water skiing on the property with the amount of water that was backing up on this property. So with the unpermeable surfaces that are going to be created with these new 105 homes, you know, that's going to be a lot of water runoff that's going to add to the problem. And it's only getting worse, like everybody has said, and I'm going to try and keep it brief. Thank you. And I encourage you to vote no.
Thank you. Our next speaker is David Hatch.
How's everybody doing tonight? My name's David Hatch. Live at 9487 County Line Road. Jim is next door to me. I mean, I know all these people that are down here. They're friends and neighbors. I'm really glad to see the attention being paid to the flooding issue. I've seen the pictures. There were some questions I could not answer as far as the frequency. That apparently it's a little bit worse than even what I thought. I mean, as bad as it is, I mean, a permanent structure garage with a water line up to the bottom of the windows. And you know, the point's been made, but I think it needs to be made a couple of times, is anything, you add 1 square foot of impervious surface to anything that drains into that, it's going to affect it. The more you build, the more water these poor people are going to get. None of that affects me. I'm on the other side of that. I'm on the side where the pressurized line from the force main, assuming that I couldn't see it on the map exactly which way it's going to run, but the church's force main line is like 5 to 8 feet off of my back property line. That's sewage under pressure. I've always thought, and I'm not an expert on it, but I've always thought that when you have pressurized pipes, your utility folks can answer those questions. How often you have to fix a ruptured line? Or what happens when a sanitary line ruptures? It doesn't, I mean, it's not pretty, and it's something that needs to be fixed now. I mean, you don't have the courtesy of just sitting here letting it run. It's a health hazard when it does go. Like I said, I can't speak to the longevity. I just know what's underneath the ground, under pressure, very close proximity to my house. My primary concern, agreeing with Jim, real good friend, Mr. Pinkerton, is it just when I heard that there was 105 houses going to be nestled in 36 acres, it just kind of, my jaw dropped. It's like, how can they get that many houses on that little piece of property? All right, it's been beat to death. We're short on time. I know everybody's got things to do, but I've got to reiterate, one of the desires that I had when, I was divorced and raising kids by myself, I made it. They did too. It was time for me to move on after my kids left, and I'm looking for something a little bit more rural. I left in Greensboro what is happening here. It's just a sprawl just started running and heading my way. I think I got out in time. But it was, I'd say what's planned is a little bit nicer than apartments on top of each other all the way. But density is density. And I like to be able to throw a rock in my backyard. Traffic issues. You've heard it all ad nauseum, so I'm not going to beat on it too much. But it's kind of, what I liked about Kernersville is actually part of your mantra. When you guys were selling Kernersville as a place to live, is the small town flavor with access to the big cities. Now we're getting all this density, this pushing into the small town flavor where people like their open space. And I don't think it's fair to the people that live out there. And there's 150 plus that have signed a petition. There's a lot of people just don't agree with what's going on, and they all live what's out there is average within decimals of average acre lots. Okay, I mean, it'll break down to 0.9, 0.87, but for the most part, I'm on an acre, Jim's on an acre, my next door neighbor's on like an acre and a half, so it all works out to about an acre, and this one doesn't. Traffic, you guys have heard a lot of that. I'm not going to dwell on that. Flooding, I think you've heard enough that, I mean, just please listen. This is serious stuff. It really is. You've heard enough about the pump station. I made a couple of comments. I wish I could answer Ms. Fulton's question about the cost. I really wish I could. I know they're not cheap, but I think it's a very valid question, and please pursue it. And you know, the HOA, I mean, how long is it going to take an HOA to build up funds to be able to manage that? What happens in between? I mean, I'm not a developer. I'm a builder. I used to be. All that stuff was taken care of before I got a set of plans. So, but anyway, it's a very, very valid question. Who pays for it? And I mentioned how I feel about, I love Kernersville. I really do. Don't make me hate it. And I have to say this in fairness, in as much fairness as I can, and I'm not the first one to bring it up. Like Mr. Pinkerton, it's not my land. I got no control over what happens to it. You guys do. This gentleman does. It's his property. I got to say, if it stayed RS20, I'd not even show up out here. I mean, I'd be fine with it. I wouldn't. I don't have a dog in the hunt, if you want to use some local terminology. So, but I mean, I just think 105 is on that size of land. It's just way too much, and you're hearing about the impacts all night. So, I'm done.
Thank you for your comment.
County Line Road. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I have to address one other piece of the sewer system regarding the churches, which is right below our house. That alarm goes off. Guess who hears it? The church doesn't hear it. I hear it. Do you have any idea how long it takes to get someone out there to tend to that alarm? Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. We've had the proponent speak, the opponent speak. It's an opportunity for rebuttal by the proponents. And it's a reminder, there's 5 minutes for rebuttal for the proponents and then 5 minutes for rebuttal for the opponents, if the proponents choose to present a rebuttal.
Thank you, Madam. I think I'm going to choose runoff as maybe the biggest issue we got out there. I think Jeff did a great job, and we've talked about this numerous times as we were going through rezoning and getting ready for it a couple times. Is times have changed in the last 20 or 30 years. I've been building here. Most of you guys have been living here. If you follow County Line Road and 150 and the new development to the right, Beaver Creek is a blue line. It's a creek. There's 600 plus acres that feed into Beaver Creek, that drain into Beaver Creek. And I've got a creek behind my house, and it goes from 4 inches to 5 feet and will wash you away because we've had the wettest year on history. Last year was the second wettest year on history. So we're seeing some phenomenal rains. Also, the farmland, as you know, is unregulated. That's been a farm as long as I can remember. I talked to Jack Peggy. He can't remember if it was. It's always been a farm as far as we know. But farmland is unregulated. I know my family owns a large farm. Runoff is the worst it can be on farmland. So what they're seeing is the absolute worst situation that it could be in, which is farmland at 36 acres being fed by 600 acres into Beaver Creek. So anything we do as far as low density, vegetation, will be helpful and improve their situation, and we're willing to work with them as much as we can. But I mean, if you ask Jeff, the low density program is the most efficient in filtering the water, slowing the water down. If you go in there RS20, you have no controls. And I don't think the soils would. I mean, I've been doing septic systems and pumps all over the state of North and South Carolina. If I had to choose 100 or even 75 septic systems and what they put in the ground being washed downstream of me, or would I take 75 or 100 homes and put it in a pump and pump it to a municipal septic sewer system? Without a doubt, I would choose the sewer system. We did them at the beach for years, and they actually tested water downstream. It's pretty gross from septic systems, but they're picking up remnants of cancer drugs, all kinds of things that are actually in septic systems, leach through fields, go downstream. So that's what we're putting downstream at that site. So we got the worst land condition areas, which is a farm. We will improve it with our low density project. And we're 36 acres out of 600 acres, and we will be good stewards of that 36 acres. And the cost I demonstrated to you earlier are better for a homeowner to have a septic pump and a system. And we are working with the church. I think most of you saw the letter of support from the church. We'll work with them to improve their septic system as we pump up to the main line. So we won't be putting toxins or drugs or anything washing down the stream, and we'll do everything we can do to control that. So, anything else? Thank you.
Bill Greco, 200 South Regional Road in Greensboro. I do think that we've heard kind of some consistency in the opposition. Traffic is an NCDOT purview. We all have to live by the rules that are upon us with DOT. As a human being, I do understand three more cars on your street is an increase in traffic that's significant to you. The flooding, and I apologize for not being able to pop it up on screen, but directly to the east of our property is where a flood zone starts, a regulated, mapped, firm community panel flood zone. Folks never want to hear it, but you live in your backyard's a flood zone. It's going to get wet when it rains. That's what the water's supposed to do in a flood zone. And it is, again, a documented flood zone. When you build structures in that floodway or that flood fringe, you're going to experience problems, particularly structures that are unpermitted, which are some of the things we saw in the staff's presentation, the sheds that you can get at Home Depot and those sorts of things. What I didn't hear from the opposition is anything that has a direct correlation to the Kernersville Land Use Plan, the Kernersville Design Plan, the 30-some odd page staff report. My definition of low density may be different than an opponent's, but the definition of low density that is relevant tonight is what is found in the land use plan and the ordinance and Kernersville's guiding documents. I would encourage us to stick to those documents. And lastly, I will say that even though this is what I do understand a lot of the opposition. When I graduated from college, I moved to Kernersville. I moved to Teague Lane in Kernersville. In 1993. That was my first residence out of school, and I could ride a four-wheeler up and down Teague Lane and nobody cared. It didn't make a difference, and I recognize that now it's certainly been developed. So when folks express those concerns, I appreciate them and understand them, but I think we do have a reasonable application in the guidelines and would certainly seek your approval of this request.
Thank you. All right, and from the neighborhood, there's 5 minutes total for rebuttal. So so that Keith has his records straight, if you could just restate your name as you begin.
Sure. Randall wants to talk, so I'll be very, very brief. David Hatch, 9487 County Line Road. I want to point one thing out that our designer has mentioned as far as calling out the floodplain on the area that's in the stream that floods. It's been brought up by everybody against it that it's, we all recognize that more drained surface is going to make it worse. It's going to increase. That area that he mentioned is east of the project, which means he's downstream of the project. So whatever's flooding now is going to flood worse. So just so long as we got that clear, it's not on the other side of it. The land use plan, it was mentioned, but I don't think their volume was up as high as mine is right now. So the in town of Kernersville's land use plan, the language says, and this is an excerpt, it's not the whole paragraph, unless the area has a lower density, 0 to 2 units per acre shall be considered. The word shall is defined by Webster's as used to express a command or exhortation. Doesn't give you a choice. You have to consider it. Your own policies tell you that. So I just kind of wanted to remind you what y'all wrote down. Randall.
Randall Reidler, 1255 Deborah Lane, Kernersville. Just a few things. I do live in the center of that entire property. I moved into my house 10 years ago, and when I moved into my house, the owners before had put an extension on the end of the house that pretty much was right on top of the septic tank. So I had to put in a new septic system because they couldn't even test anything. They couldn't even get to the septic tank. I paid $3,000. That was 10 years ago, but I paid $3,000. Haven't had a problem with it at all. Just had it pumped for the first time, which after 5 years you should. I waited longer, and there has not been any problems with it. The majority of this planned open space is the federally regulated wetlands. I couldn't find a whole lot on top of that other than about 5 acres or so. And there's actually a giant portion that is not labeled as like common area that could be. But it's not even labeled there that they would want to put something there. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Peggy Watson Smith, 1290 Denver Lane. As far as the pump station goes, it's going to be in front of my house. I don't want to hear bells and the smell every time I turn around. And they keep on talking about 36 acres. This is not 36 acres that they're going to develop. It's only 24 because there's 12 acres they cannot develop on. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else in rebuttal? Are we over or are we? Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in rebuttal?
Arthur Marks, 4600 Eden Bridge Drive. I'm just absolutely incredulous that it's suggested that this project is going to improve my flooding rather than make it worse. And I also want to add that my house is not in a flood zone, but yet I still have to deal with the runoff of what comes down Little Beaver Creek. And I just cannot accept for a moment that this is going to do anything except make my situation worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? It'd have to be very brief, but there's still a minute left. All right, seeing none, well, did you want to speak further? Okay. Anybody? All right, seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Mayor Pro Tem Fulton had questions. You may ask questions of anyone who's in the room. If you're asked a question, please come to the podium to address it. That way there's a microphone, that way everyone can hear you. I would ask that you simply answer the question and not start a monologue, but just answer the question, okay? So you may ask questions of anyone in the room. Any other alderman, after she finishes, can ask questions. Or if you have questions of the same person, you can jump in. Just let me know.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Fulton.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions if one of you want to come up to the podium, either one of you. Okay, thanks. Mr. Smith, so thank you for coming up. On page 8 of the staff report, it says the developer may be pursuing a request to the town of Kernersville for the reduction of size of the private streets and sidewalks. Is that actually the case?
We're contemplating, we've been in discussion with ourselves about the cost of HOAs and the width of streets. And I may have had some personal conversations with you all about it, but streets are, I think the city street requirement, whether private or public, is almost 40 feet of built upon space. So I think the staff does a great job, but we try to work together as developers and towns to make things better. So to answer the question in short is, if you could imagine 1 linear foot, the town requirement is 40 feet. That's 2 5-foot sidewalks, 2 roll curbs, and 24 feet of asphalt. Number one, that's a lot of storm runoff. It's quite expensive, and it's private, so it would never be taken over. I think there's some other great models, even in like Cary or Chapel Hill, where the streets are, you have 1 sidewalk, you could reduce that down to 30 feet. The cost would be less to the HOA. We'd have less storm runoff to accomplish, and it would still push more built upon area into each lot so the customer could have more parking for his cars. I think there's some antiquated stuff. It's things we're just talking about.
So that's a yes or a no?
It's in the works. We're discussing.
Okay, so you're planning on possibly doing it?
I wouldn't say that right
Jenny, can I
now.
do a follow-up question?
Oh,
To this, and then back to you.
Sure.
So the width currently would be what?
The width currently, as the zoning goes, is, Jeff, keep me straight on this. The city requirement is 24 feet of asphalt, around 3 feet of curb on each side, and then two 5-foot sidewalks. That's pretty much 40 feet required by the city. We'll do it. But I mean, I think we've always had a great working relationship with Kernersville. It's been probably the best town I've ever done work in as far as being able to say, hey, we have ideas. Do you want to hear us? Whereas like in other cities, we don't want to hear what you're saying. But I think there's ways to reduce costs to HOAs, reduce runoff, and make the long-term cost of ownership, which you asked about earlier, less. And still put more built upon space for parking your new $50,000 car, not like in 1978 when people parked on the street in Kernersville. So,
thank you for that.
Anything else?
Yeah, I have a couple more for you. And it may go to Mr. Hatling. Is this property in a flood zone or no?
I think when people think of flood zone, they think of a FEMA flood zone, and this is not a designated FEMA flood zone.
Okay, but we do have a lot of water issues in that area, is what I'm gathering.
From what was submitted, yes.
Okay, and so you're going to do 2 phases. It looks like phase 1 and phase 2.
It may even be 3 or 4, but yes, depending on the work. But yeah, right now we're at 2, I think, Jeff. Is that right? I've got 2 or 3 projects going, so forgive me.
I mean, the site plan shows 2 phases, but the developer many times will adjust it to do it all at once. Sometimes he'll do it, but it's not a condition of the rezoning or statement. So
well, my concern, the reason I asked that question is on the site plan, if for some reason only phase 1 got developed per the plan that I'm looking at, it would be more than low density. It would be 3.3. It would fall under that 2.9.
That would be incorrect.
Okay, well, I'm looking at,
right, but you take the 36 acres and divide it.
You're not developing all 36 acres.
I know, but you take the 36 acres and divide it by the number of units. So it'd actually be, if it was half, it would be, instead of 3 units per acre, it'd probably 6 units. I mean, it'd be 1.5 units per acre.
Mm-hmm. It would be lesser density.
Okay, well, because when I look at this phase 1 and I go to units per acre on this plan, it says 3.3.
Yeah, and those notes are similar to the same discussion we had on Shields Road. Bill was the designer there also. Those notes are not.
Are they accurate or not?
They're watershed notes.
Okay. So
they're
not really accurate.
Yes, they're accurate. They're not housing density notes.
Okay. Well, I was also reading the general notes over here, and it said there's no portion of this track is located in a flood zone, but I kind of heard different. But I guess if we're going by FEMA, then that would be accurate.
I think what they stated, the FEMA maps start east of this site.
So, okay, so.
Question?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you had a question for me?
No.
Maybe this will clarify it for you. I mean, so make sure I'm right about this, Bill. Beaver Creek is a major creek, and we have the Corps coming out to certify our wetlands. We've had a wetlands professional do it, but then the Corps comes out and certifies the delineation, and then it goes on most maps. But I think you'll find that is a blue line creek. It is like Bill said, there's a 600-acre basin that feeds Beaver Creek. It's nature. It's what happens. Water runs down there. We can't build on it. We will do everything we can to maintain and clean the water as it goes downstream.
Thank you. I just got a lot of phone calls about water in Kernersville. And I have one other thing.
Yes,
you did address of the septic system being about $250,000. I just want to make sure, and it can be a ballpark. You don't have to be exact. I just want to be clear in my mind, the expense.
So it's hard to get your head around, but because I have a septic system, we do lots of septic. Guilford County is the most septic county in the state of North Carolina. And a lot of these homes, by the way, in Eden Terrace are Guilford County.
Mm-hmm.
They're not Forsyth County, but it's the most septic area. So today a septic, and it may have been $3,500 10, 15 years ago. A septic today starts at about $45 on any difficult soil, which is block panels and things run as high as $7,000 to $8,000. So if you did that, that's about $800,000. A septic pump, about $250,000. A high quality septic pump with a backup generator and a monitoring company that there's very little smell. It's quiet. Has a professional team that monitors it, and it's regulated by the state.
Right, and we divide the $250 around 105 houses, you get about $3,000.
That's right. That's right. So
I just want to make sure I'm on the same page.
Right. So, just as a seasoned old developer like I am, I'd much rather spend $3,000 on that and have a much more sanitary yard and system.
Perfect. Thank you for your time and answers.
Thank you.
Chief Alderman, can you come? I have a question for you, sir. Thank you. We don't know if this is a yes or no, so I'm trying to get this in my head. If we were to reduce the size of the street, how does that affect a fire truck and turnaround ability? I know that we have a gate on Deborah Lane, but shrinking that, I just want to hear the safety of that. Is it safe for fire trucks to do that? Is it going to be, more? Just talk to me.
So road width, 20 foot wide.
20?
20 foot.
Okay.
That's what we're looking for.
That's what you're looking for. Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful. All right. And the only other, I'll save that other question. Someone else may ask it. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Swisher, is the road width of what the fire department needs consistent with what public services needs? Okay. You're welcome. All right.
I've got some questions.
Sure. Alderman Boyer, go ahead. Of anyone in the room.
All right, yes. And Jenny, thank you for letting me cut in. I had a question about the road width, but from a different perspective. But I'm going to approach it in a different way. Yes, sir, Mr. Smith. Do all of the houses have garages, and are they 1-car, 2-car garage? What is the plan on garages?
Yes, sir. They all have garages. And I think the discussion goes to when we look at Kernersville's, and I haven't really had this, I've had a basic conversation with staff, and they said, let's get through zoning first. They are going to have garages, and we would like to have more built-upon space pushed on each lot so you can have more parking at that home by reducing that road width down to, like the chief said, maybe 20 feet. I've got some different schematics from different towns, maybe one sidewalk. So we're gaining 3 things. We're still being safe with fire and police rescue. We're parking on our own property, not in the street, which we wouldn't allow anyway. We're saving some money for the HOA in the long term, and we're reducing runoff by 25% in just our streets and sidewalks.
Okay, back to garages. Are they likely to be 1-car garages?
They're almost
2-car?
assuredly 2. And some of them are 2+. I mean, I haven't built a 1.
I know the pictures show 2 or 3.
They're all 2, and then we do a stack today. A lot of times there'll be 2, and then a shop inside, so you can put 3 cars.
And so cars would park side by side, am I correct?
Cars would park side by side, and I think we've talked a lot about built-upon space, the town's built-upon space requirements, that, how much you can have on each lot. So you want to force those homes to have parking for the cars in their driveway, not on the street.
Okay, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is this past weekend I was delivering something to a school that is outside Kernersville, but in a residential neighborhood. And it was a Saturday, and people were home from work. These were smaller homes. I could barely get down the street because people were parking on both sides of the street because they didn't have garages.
Right.
Those that did, with very few exceptions, did anybody have a garage? They were 1-car garages. Most of the driveways would stack the cars so people were parking on the street. I could barely drive down that road. I went back today and I measured it, the width of the road, and it was 21 feet, 5 inches.
That's a standard DOT road.
And that I would never support a road that narrow in a residential area, because people, if they park in the street, you can't get down the street without.
Two things that would address that. As the HOA, we wouldn't allow standardized parking in the streets. But like what Jeff and I talked about a little bit briefly and not seriously is, let's increase the built upon area. Let's take some of that built upon area we say from the right. Let's increase the built upon area at each home in an amendment, in a text amendment that says, hey, I've got a 2-car garage, and cars today are $50,000, $60,000. It's not like people want to park their $50,000 car on the street. They want to park it either in their garage or in their driveway. And I think we're a little antiquated, and we would love to talk about a text amendment later, but I hope I explained that.
Okay.
Well,
I just want a wide enough street so when cars do park,
right.
I want to be proud of any neighborhood that we approve, and I wasn't proud of what I just drove through on Saturday. It was not in Kernersville.
We would not allow as standard parking on the streets because you have your own 2-car garage plus parking on site, but we need to work on some built upon areas. And I've talked to some of the other developers on the other side of Kernersville, and they're having some of the same issues as far as built upon space to be able to get parking at their homes.
Okay. Have you tested the soils for septic, if what would perk and what wouldn't perk?
So the property has a lot of history. And like I said, a guy named Jim Beeson, if you guys know the Beesons, they've been around forever. Jim's the best soil guy, I think, in the state. And Jack Pegg and I talked, and that land was on the market for 2 years. And I looked back into the old records. Most of that soil, and you can tell by looking at it, but we did do some hand augering, and there were some records from 10 years ago. But that soil would, if it did perk, it would require more block panel and more sophisticated septic systems. It's not a good perking. That's why it stayed on the market for 2 years. And then one day I just came across the septic. When I called Forsyth County, they didn't know the septic line was out there. I found a manhole in a yard and then went and talked to Pete at the church and kind of started figuring it out. But it's at the very end of the tail line, but to me, it's a great way not to put more septics in the ground.
I'd be curious from the homeowners that are here, sorry if I backed away from the mic, if this was built, if they would have preferred septic or this pump into a public sewer. I'm curious of what people that live in that area would prefer if they had their preference.
I can just tell you, like I said, I'm an old guy now, developer wise, and I put in lots of septic systems. And I put in a lot of sewer lines, and it's a lot better, especially at the coast where we used a lot of soil, water to re-irrigate golf courses with. Things that are in septics. Septics are fine. I have one. But by far, I would choose a pump system back to a sanitary sewer to be a much better system.
Okay. I think that's all I have at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay. So maybe that question to some, if you could sit down, I want to hear from the residents. Mrs. Riddler, if you had a preference of that,
Septic.
if this subdivision existed.
Septic. I would not want any kind of pumping.
Okay. And Mrs. Peggy Smith? And sorry if I'm calling you out, but this gives my least.
Septic. If the pump station's going in front of my house, septic.
Okay. And Mr. Martz? If you say it from there, I'll repeat it in the microphone. Okay. All right, Mr. and Mrs. Pinkerton.
I don't really care. It's just that I don't want to see 105 homes there.
Okay.
When we talk about the street width going from 24 to 20 to reduce runoff, we just heard that the farmland was the best runoff. Now we're hearing that the streets make a difference.
Okay, this isn't rebuttal time, but thank you. Mr. Toomas?
I'm in Gilbert County, and I have a low-pressure pump system in my backyard.
Okay.
I've not had any issues with it for a septic. But if the soils don't support it, then you need to come up with some other alternative.
Okay, and Mr. Hatch? Thank you, sir. Mr. Hatch?
Septic canceling.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. And I have driven down all of your streets, actually, each of the last several days, as well as after the planning board meeting. So I know the topography of the area, and I can see somewhat of what you're talking about, and I rode by it today at 4 after this big rain. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Mr. Crews? Speak right into your microphone if you would.
I've got it on.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? The 12 acres that Miss Smith was talking about that was flooded or low, what was that, Peggy?
The 12 acres out of 36 is not developed. We can't develop it. The 105 houses is going on 24 acres of land.
Okay.
Did you hear her answer, or did she?
Yeah, that's
turn the
what I
microphone?
was trying to understand. So the 12 acres out, you take the 12 off of the 36. So can you answer that?
I'm sorry. I don't mean, it is 36 acres. I think what Ms. Smith's trying to say is we are setting 12 acres aside because it is a wetland and it is Beaver Creek. So we're required, we can't build, I mean, it's a you've heard the term Blue Line Creek. It is a Blue Line Creek on the map. The Corps of Engineers will control that plus the wetlands. We can't build on it, but it is part of our property, so we get credit for not building on it, and it will remain natural. So we're not talking about 24 acres here, we're talking about 36 point something, I think. So I've never heard it described that way, but it is 36 acres. Any other question?
Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, can you go ahead? What size homes are you proposing?
Sir?
What size, square footage wise, like GLA?
Well, so I've recently had lots of phone calls from people around there who are saying, hey, I'd love to live in a neighborhood that was 1,800 to 2,300, 2,400 square foot home, patio home style where the yards are mowed, and I don't have to take care of that half acre or acre. So we've had a lot of discussion with people from Oak Ridge and from that area, recently phone calls, which is pretty positive. And these homes they won't be cheap. I mean, you all know what's happening with lumber and construction. So you're talking about, 1,800 to 2,500 and homes that are 300 to 350. And that's affordable, guys. I mean, I have a neighborhood in Oak Ridge right now that I put a 2,000 square foot minimum on, and they're 1 acre with septic, and I've got $1 million homes going up from other builders. We're in a massive cost, the most massive cost increase I've seen in my lifetime, and I've been around this since I was 8 years old. I'm talking homes are selling in Oak Ridge for $200 a foot, sometimes a little more. And we have very little. That's one reason we built Davis Gardens. Even with our rents over there, we have people who need a place that's 300, 325, 350, that they don't have to mow the yard. We don't, and I know Barry's doing the project down the road. I forget the name of that, the one right down there on the right. Those are half acre lot homes, but they'll be 500 or 550. That's pretty expensive. So we're trying to meet a market demand. I think you guys are bumping up against Oak Ridge. That's a pretty high paying demographic, the highest demographic pay wise in the state. Lots of people want to move down into a smaller home. It'll have an association to mow the yard. So, yes, sir, a question?
You said you've put in several of these pump stations previously. How many of these have you installed yourself?
Septic pumps?
Not necessarily on just a residential 1 acre project, a pump station like the one you're proposing here for this site.
Yes. So the pump system that we put in is fairly complex, but reasonably priced. We've done them at the coast. I've done 4, and I've done bigger ones like package plants, GE package plants. If you buy a good one, it's rated well, has a backup generator, it's maintained, it's overseen by the state, and it's maintained by a utility company. And we take great care of where we put them, that they don't smell, that they pump, that they're quiet. And I think, I've been talking, like I said, to the church. We will help to improve and update part of their septic line as we go up to that manhole on County Line Road.
So if you're putting in a newer septic system that you're talking about and a utility company is taking care of it, what safeguards do you have in place for the noise, these buzzers and beepers and everything else that's going on, that you don't have that issue? Granted, if nobody's there, if a homeowner association, surely somebody's going to hear it, but if a utility company's monitoring it, what do you put in place so it's not like a fire alarm going off?
Today with Wi-Fi, I'm afraid what the church has is the church converted from a drain field to a pump, and they've got like what you would have, like he said, he has a low pressure. That means you probably have a light in your basement or your house that goes off. So we use Wi-Fi today. So everything is controlled by Wi-Fi. So the management company, the emergency company would get a beep on the Wi-Fi. It may have an indicator light, but I don't think it would have a horn with it. I can take that off. Has a backup generator. I could also talk to Pete and them about modifying theirs and updating theirs if it has an alarm buzzer. Really, the alarm buzzer, like she said, if an alarm buzzer goes off on a septic system and nobody's there, what good does it do? But since that system's been put in, you can use Wi-Fi. Those systems can be sent to Kenny, the maintenance guy at the church, to come, take a look at it. So we will make sure that there's, very, very little smell. It's very quiet because we buy a very nice pump system. And we will use a remote Wi-Fi warning system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question for Jeff. If this were to stay RS20, you didn't know what it would perk for, how many houses could you get on a 36-acre site, or 24 based on 12 acres being wetlands? How many houses could you get on an RS20 site?
I mean, RS20, you'd have two options, just a conventional subdivision or RS20 PRD. And I think in the staff report, the RS20 PRD is 78 units versus 105. On a conventional, how this land is situated, where you have developable property along County Line Road, and then it drops down into the wetland stream area, and then you have the land to the, let's see if we get my direction, land to the north side. So you get this kind of split. And economically, as you know, from going to that first phase to that second phase, you'd have a very long road with no development along it. So the economics, the feasibility of a conventional subdivision on septic, I think it was mentioned it's been on the market for 2 years. I think we've seen somebody pick it up if they could just do a septic development, but I don't think the numbers work.
And so
that's I'm only making assumptions.
It's a guesstimate based on the knowledge. Gotcha. So for going to a zoning to RS12, you're basically gaining 23 more lots, but you're getting a 30-foot buffer around the whole property, curb and gutter, and a PRD that's going to take care of the ground with the homeowners association, I guess is my point. That's kind of what I was getting at. Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Madam Mayor. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hatling, the developer has talked about the cost, the sales price of the potential homes and the square footage. He's mentioned that tonight, but is any of that an enforceable condition in what's been presented?
There's currently not a condition. If the board wishes a condition for square foot, I would ask for clarification from the applicant, and you can make that a condition if agreeable to the applicant.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there any further questions? Mr. Pinnix, do you have any questions? Okay. Well, everyone's asked really good questions tonight. This has been a very in-depth public hearing and discussion. So is there any discussion, or is there a motion? Chris, can you repeat what you said?
I said I have no more discussion. Thank you.
Okay, no more questions. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Okay, Mayor, I'll make a motion to deny the request.
Okay, motion to deny by Mayor Pro Tem Fulton. Is there a second? Second by Kenny Crews. Mr. Hatling, for purposes of the Kernersville Development Plan and all that, do you have suggested language for that motion to deny? We can't see it. It came up as dots.
I want to show, I have to look at it right now, so everybody asks for IT is looking at that.
I bet IT could change it for you. Could you remove Jeff Hatling's screen for a moment from the...
Oh,
Thank you.
pressure's off.
Mateus took the traditional approach of just simply turning it off.
Good.
So the high-tech approach.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back in session. We'll let the recording start.
We're live, Mayor.
Okay, perfect. Welcome back, everyone. All right, we'll continue where we left off. We are in our public hearings, which is item 1 on the agenda. We are to item 1E. It's a public hearing rezoning. Petitioner requesting a single-phase conditional use rezoning from MUS to MUC for property located at 1188 Solomon Drive, containing a total of 17.49 plus or minus acres. Uses requested residential building multifamily, zoning docket K-786.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. Catherine Gardner, the Community Development Manager, will be making the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board of Aldermen. So the next case is K-719A3. The proposed rezoning is from the mixed-use special use district, single-phase and two-phase, to the mixed-use conditional use district. That's an update to the language for North Carolina General Statutes 160D. And this is a single-phase rezoning. The proposed use as identified on the application was the residential building multifamily, but after a review in the Development Review Committee, residential building urban is being recommended by staff and planning board due to the height of the buildings. It is 17.49 acres over 2 parcels on either side of Solomon Drive, 312 units total with 17.8 units per acre. There is an amended condition as part of this rezoning. The current Smith Crossing Special Use District restricts multifamily on Tract 1 to only being located above commercial or office space as an upper story use. So the proposed amendment would remove that condition to allow for multifamily development without that added commercial piece. Across the 2 parcels, it's 13 3-story buildings with 312 units. The smaller parcel on the north side of Solomon Drive has 1 building and associated parking, and the rest of the buildings and the rest of the parking will be on the larger parcel to the south. Amenities include a central common recreation area with smaller grassy recreation areas throughout. It's like pockets within the parking area, dog parks, and a clubhouse. This is a larger view of that site plan showing Solomon Drive, cutting between the 2 parcels, and then the location of all the buildings. The building design meets the highway corridor overlay standard, architectural features described as neoclassical. They incorporate a variety of classical architectural features into the structure, and we will be looking for the following at the time of building permit. So the hip and gable roof with a specified pitch, windows with sills and lintels, small window panes, and trim with decorative shutters. Entrances, porches, panel doors, and then that brick facade foundation. The picture on the left side of your screen is a rendering of the building elevations. The use is for multifamily residential. The buildings are 3 stories and vary from 45 feet in height to 48 feet in height. That's resulting in the change from residential building multifamily as the use to residential building urban. The height is also impacted by the 9-foot ceilings interior to the apartments, and then the cupolas and high-pitched roofs that really add that decorative element to the exterior. So residential building multifamily has that 40-foot height limit, and that's why we're proposing the residential building urban. At the time of the UDO's adoption in 1994, the 3-story apartment buildings were typically 40 feet or below. They didn't have many of the design features that we see today. So we are proposing the use be changed to residential building urban because it does not have a height limit. Also note is that we are drafting a UDO text amendment to address the higher heights that are now more common in architectural design for apartments. Staff's recommendation was on the rezoning was to move to amend the UDO to rezone the property in this case from mixed use special use district to mixed use conditional use district, single phase for this portion of Smith Crossing. Staff found that the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the Kernersville development plan and is both reasonable and in the public interest. It increases the strong sense of place of Smith Crossing and in Kernersville. The complete sidewalk system that's required for internal circulation and connections to the external sidewalk systems will help residents access the commercial areas that exist along Union Cross Road. The high-quality design will enhance the commercial tax base and help diversify the economic base. And the apartments will provide workforce housing to Kernersville's growing logistics, manufacturing, medical, and commercial industries. Staff also recommended approval of the site plan with the conditions listed in the staff report with that modified use to residential building urban. Planning Board had a public hearing on April 12th. There was only a speaker in favor, property owner and developer. So the motion on the rezoning was made by Chris Oakman to recommend approval of the rezoning as presented by staff, which was seconded by Margaret Burks. And the motion carried with a 9-0 vote. And then on the site plan, the motion was made by Joe Ornstein to recommend approval as presented by staff, which was seconded by Margaret Burks. And the motion also carried with a 9-0 vote. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Okay, this is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. Again, we'll hear from proponents first, then opponents, a rebuttal if there is one, then there will be a second rebuttal. I have signed up to speak Chris Parr and Jeff Smith.
Jeff Smith, 8443 Alice Player Drive, Oak Ridge. I'm the Smith Crossing property developer for the 85-acre site. This is our partner on this project, Chris Parr. Chris and I have been working together for about a year or so on this project to get the site plan that you see today. We've spent a lot of time working on designing the buildings so that it'll ultimately add to the sense of feel that Catherine mentioned. It's really important to us that Smith Crossing has a really high quality feel to it. And so everything that we've tried to bring to the town and to you, including these apartments, has been designed to be of the higher quality feel. And so we're really proud to have really the preeminent apartment developer, Chris Parr, on this project as well. The other thing I wanted to mention about this particular piece of land, I heard the last developer talk about how long their land had been on the market. This particular property has been on the market for about 15 years. And it's been challenging to find the right puzzle piece that makes it a support structure for the commercial piece that we've developed on Union Cross Road. And so I feel like a positive vote tonight will ultimately provide a great support not only to our property that's on Union Cross Road, the commercial piece, but also to the Union Cross Station Center, the Food Line Center that's adjacent. They've submitted a letter of support for this project, and we've had several other of the current users within Smith Crossing reach out and provide support for this particular project. So I wanted to make myself available if you had any questions.
Thank you.
Yes, Chris Parr, 1813 Pembroke, Greensboro, 27408. So Jeff and I actually had worked together really almost 7 years on putting Smith Crossing together. As part of Jeff's family had owned the property for quite a while, got caught up in the mess in 2006, 2007, 2008. I, born and raised in Greensboro, went to Grimsley High School, went to Appalachian State, found my first property in Forsyth County in roughly around 2000. And it started building apartments when you could buy a house without a job and without a down payment in the early 2000. And so I've cultivated a strong presence in Forsyth County, Winston-Salem, the Clemens area up towards Louisville, Brookberry Farm area. And Smith Crossing has done great. I own it by me and the bank. There's no other like secret partners. So I pretty much on a weekly basis am out there with following up on the property and everything that's going on there. So Jeff had this property up for sale for quite a while. And we had talked about it, and it just seems a natural fit along I-40 to put a multifamily property there for the commute to Greensboro, Winston, High Point. And like I said, the property I've got is doing very well. I've got working across the street in Winston-Salem with Cracker Barrel, and I've got something also going up in that area. But I like the area, and I didn't want this particular site to pass up. So the plan is to work on getting a grading permit right away because it has languished for quite a while out there, and hopefully, start it within a year or two after my property across the street. I get that up and running and open. And if you guys have any questions for me, I'm available to answer them.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here in opposition? Seeing no one else to speak in favor and seeing no one in opposition, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Are there any questions? Is there any discussion?
I just have one question, Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Parr, please tell me the vacancy rate out at Smith Crossing.
We're 97% occupied.
That's what I want to hear. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully that's a good thing.
It's a great
super
thing.
Full.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Okay. Any discussion or is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
As recommended?
As recommended by staff.
Okay.
Second.
All right, motion for approval of the rezoning and the site plan.
I second.
Oh. Sorry, Joe. We've already got Chris in.
Beat me.
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta be fast around here, but you are fast. I think it was a sound lag from the microphones. Maybe you said it at the same time and I heard him first. We always, the virtual, you have to pause after you speak, or you speak on top of each other. You just have to give that pause. We don't have to do that as much here. Got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Fulton, second by Alderman Thompson. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Chris, I wanted to tell you that I've met a lot of people who live in Smith Crossing, and they really like it.
Well, that's good.
I mean, it's like I brace myself. Okay, you want to talk to the mayor about where you live. It's going to be bad, but they really like it. They were excited about the new things being built as different amenities were opening up, and it's been a nice place for people to live. They've enjoyed it there.
That's good. It's almost 400 units. It's hard to make everybody happy. So I ask people all the time, my friends, I say, you happy living here? When I see them walking, they have no idea. It's like, what do you call it, undercover boss? And I was like, yeah, I have a friend living here. You like living here? So we try to keep everybody happy. It's not always easy.
And I think one of my sons was one of the first weekend patients at that pediatric practice right after the open. They didn't even have their billing set up there yet. They were just like, you can't pay us because we can't take money right now. Yeah. So, but we appreciate it. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay. But they did remember to send the bill later, just so y'all know. All right. We are now to item F, which is a public hearing rezoning. Petitioner requesting a general use district rezoning from RS7 to PB pedestrian business for property located at 325 East Bodenhammer Street, containing a total of 0.18 plus or minus acres. Uses requested, all PB uses apply. Zoning Docket K-787. Okay, Mr. Hatling?
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. Catherine Gardner will do the presentation.
All right, Ms. Gardner.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. Our last rezoning tonight is a general use rezoning on East Bodenhammer Street. The existing zoning is residential single family RS7. The proposed zoning is pedestrian business or PB. The site is 0.18 acres, and it is located right here on Bodenhammer Street. The land use plan designates this site as mixed use. It's just off of downtown. And the Kernersville Development Plan and Land Use Plan recommend redevelopment and reuse of properties in the downtown area. With the general use rezoning, requires consideration of all the pedestrian business potential uses. The town staff has been working with Marble and Granite World to help them expand their current operation. The proposed rezoning would give them additional expansion options. But like I said, all uses have to be considered. After adoption of the overlay districts and with no plans to widen Bodenhammer Street, this board has already approved numerous general use district rezonings to promote redevelopment along Bodenhammer Street. The proposed pedestrian business has a 40-foot building setback requirement from the adjacent RS7 zoning district, indicated by that orange dashed line, a 15-foot buffer yard adjacent to the RS7 zoning district, which you see on the screen highlighted in yellow, a 20-foot street yard along Bodenhammer Street. That's the other 15-foot buffer at the back. So there's your 20-foot buffer yard along Bodenhammer Street. And then outdoor storage would be required to be screened within 100 feet from Bodenhammer Street. So even with the change in the zoning, there are significant protections in place for that adjacent residential zoning district. These requirements limit the development of the site to protect and enhance the corridor and protect the single-family residential use. Staff's recommendation was to move to amend the zoning ordinance of the town by rezoning the property in case K-787 from RS7 to PB. Staff finds that the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan and is reasonable and in the public interest because it promotes the redevelopment and reuse of properties in the downtown area as specified in the development plan and the land use plan. It is located in the highway corridor overlay district. The PB zoning is conducive to adaptive reuse of existing structures or small infill projects, and the road improvements are already existing in the corridor. Planning Board held a public hearing on April 12th. There was one speaker in favor. The motion was made by Margaret Burks and seconded by Chris Oakman to recommend approval of the rezoning as presented by staff, and the motion carried with a 9-0 vote.
Thank you. All right, any questions? And just for people in the room or watching, there would be no site plan because it is a general use rezoning. All right. No questions? All right, this is a public hearing. The public hearing is open. I have one speaker signed up to speak in favor, Anise Hagee. If you could restate your name and your address for the clerk.
My name is Anise Haj, and the address of my business is 321 East Bodenhammer Street, Kernersville. What an interesting night. Never been to something like this. So, my brother and I are the owners of Marble and Granite World, and we have been in Kernersville since about 2001. My father started the business. So we have grown from a mom and pop type granite shop to now we're about 25 employees. So we've worked hard to enhance the image of our location, and I think anybody who's driven down Bodenhammer Street can see that. We do need to add some office space, so we are planning on expanding the showroom, which is that building that you saw in the picture, towards the back. So we purchased that property next to us, and I think it's going to help us out on just probably the pervious land and whatever, and the offsets as well. But whatever land we have left over, we'll probably use for some additional parking and stuff. So we want to stay in Kernersville. We're growing, so we could use the additional space. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone in opposition? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed.
A motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve by Alderman Thompson.
I'll second.
Got a second by Alderman Kenny Crews. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
And the new building looks great, by the way. It's a nice addition to Bodenheimer Street. I got to go last.
Thank you.
And we're currently reviewing his expansion plans. They're in the process of being submitted. So it'd be nice to see the addition, of that current building. I mean, it's really, I went down there today, I took a picture. It's the nicest redevelopment on Bodenheimer Street. And I really think in the long term, Bodenheimer will blend into downtown. I mean, we did about 10 years ago, we did a conceptual what Bodenheimer could be like. So hopefully we'll continue to see great redevelopment and investment on Bodenheimer Street.
Thank you. All right, we are to item 2 on the agenda. That would seem really bad if there weren't a lot of subparts. We're to item 2 on the agenda, which would seem really bad if there weren't a lot of subparts to item 1. But we're to item 2, which also has a lot of subparts. The first subpart is speakers from the floor. Is there anyone in attendance who'd like to address the board on a non-agenda item? Do we need to take a brief recess?
No, it's fine.
Okay. All right, is there anyone who'd like to address the board on a non-agenda item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to item B, consideration of a voluntary annexation petition by Curtis Swisher, agent for the town of Kernersville, for property located on Beeson Road across from Ivy Redmond Sports Complex at the intersection of Beeson Court, containing 13.539 acres, more or less. Mr. Swisher?
Madam Mayor, this is the piece of property that the board purchased from some of the Beeson heirs several months ago. We have the public hearing on the annexation of that property, and this is the vote for that annexation tonight. And if you've been out there recently, we've graded off a portion of that property, a very small portion, to build a new gravel parking lot there for the dog lot. So making some progress on that, and then if the board sees fit to annex it tonight.
Okay, are there any questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Alderman Thompson, second by Alderman Boyer. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, item C is consideration of a resolution to declare items surplus and authorize disposal. Mr. Swisher.
Madam Mayor, you have in front of you the new list of surplus items. We had one that was removed. That was a fire truck. Mayor Pro Tem Fulton brought that up last month. We went back and looked. That fire truck kind of surplused itself several years ago. I don't know if it formally surplused it or not, but it surplused itself by catching on fire. So we no longer have it anyway to surplus. But the rest of the items on there, we are asking the board to declare surplus. Some of those items, most of the items, we will auction off. If they bring money, we'll sell them. If they don't, we'll dispose of them another method, which is usually throwing them away. So if the board sees fit to declare those surplus, we will start disposing of those.
Okay, are there any questions or do I have a motion?
So moved.
Got a motion by Alderman Thompson.
I'll second.
Got a second by Alderman Bruce Boyer. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, the next item is item D, consideration of an ordinance regarding the parking of mobile retail vendors in certain locations. Mr. Swisher, and we do have a speaker signed up to speak on this.
Madam Mayor, this is very similar to the ordinance that was on the agenda last month that died for the lack of a second. It's back on the agenda tonight. It has changed a little bit. It now allows, or is the way the ordinance is written, it does allow one mobile food truck that's duly licensed by a local government health department and one properly licensed mobile retail sales truck. They can park, as you see in the ordinance. We're recommending Saturday, Sunday, and Monday from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Tuesday through Friday from 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. The thinking there is that on Sunday and Monday especially, there's not a lot open downtown. So these folks could go in downtown and provide a service where there's not very many of those services being provided. And then Tuesday through Friday, just at nighttime, since most of the businesses there are open downtown. They would not be allowed to park anywhere downtown. They would only be allowed to park in front of the space or in front of the business that is hosting the truck. If it's one space down, that's fine. There's some situations, KBC, for instance, does not have a space right in front of it. It's basically as you go out the door a little bit to the right. So they couldn't just come in downtown and park all over downtown. I know that was a concern of some folks, but it would be in front of that business, and the business actually has to host it. They just can't pull up and park and say, I'm being hosted. I mean, at that point, the business could call us and say, hey, this food truck's out here and I'm not hosting them. So we would go down and ask them to move. So that's the ordinance that you have in front of you. Like I say, the change was some different times on it. And also now it includes one mobile retail sales truck. So be glad to answer any questions the board may have. I know you've gotten one email, I think, from Mr. Cashin in support of that. He asked that email be entered into the minutes. Mr. Hooker will enter that email into the minutes. And I think you also received a letter from Mr. Nicoletta at Giada's. I don't know if he wanted his entered into the minutes, but in fairness, we'll enter his into the minutes as well. One was in favor of and one was opposed.
Okay, and I'll recognize at this time Bethany Woods and Mark Stamper.
Good evening. My name's Bethany Woods. My residential address is 110 Cliffwood Drive, Kernersville. We're here on the behalf of our business, Follies LLC, which is located 148 North Main Street, Kernersville. Wanted to reach out to y'all, seek approval for the food trucks, mainly because we've had a large request in the past 5 months that we've been open from, I would say, 95% of our patrons requesting food. We are not a restaurant, but I would love to cater nutritional food for our company and for our patrons. We are open 7 days a week. We're mainly focused on evening settings because lunch settings, we do have availability. I do feel like our patrons is a different clientele in the evening, catering food-wise versus the downtown dining experience that's open in the evenings. They offer more of a sit-down environment, catering to different patrons than what we are catering to. So I don't feel like we would be imposing on any other local businesses downtown between the hours that was spoken during the days of Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We have noticed a lot of customers seeking food in downtown Kernersville on Mondays, and unfortunately, we do not have anything open or available to feed these customers, these patrons, people that's not from Kernersville visiting downtown Kernersville. There's no options for food. And we would just love to be able to offer them the option to stay in downtown Kernersville. Also, downtown Kernersville is growing. There's more apartments in the factory, and it will allow those citizens to be able to walk to more options versus just what's available now. You're good. it's just been a high demand. When we first opened, I was not expecting food trucks, but it has been every day, almost every other person. This is part of our future is food trucks. And people not only are asking, but they're expecting food. And I would love to be able to cater to their expectations and their needs and their desires. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
I can't beat that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, other questions, discussion, clarifications of the ordinance?
I just have one thing. I'll ask it to Mr. Swisher or Mr. Wolf. Retail sales, do we need to add service or would like a dog washing truck in front of or whatever? I'm brain dead right now. Polly's. Thank you. Will that be okay under this ordinance? Because I don't think they'll do that often, but if they had a special event, I know there is a mobile dog washing vehicle.
The main problem you're going to have is Polly's has no parking space in front of it.
Okay, that's a
So
great
that would-
point. So
That would make
would
that,
they be able to go across the street or no?
I wouldn't think, I mean, I don't think you want to get into
Yeah,
crossing the
that's fine.
street with trucks.
So if they were to come to us, could we do a special permit just for that one-time use, like when we close the streets for them? Or is that something we could look at later?
And that'd be something I would recommend looking at later.
Okay, so leave this.
And you might could somehow issue them a permit to do it in the public parking lot.
Okay.
Or if they have a right of way behind their building. I don't know if that's an alley that they own or if it's right
It is
of way.
just, yeah, it's that
And
big.
it may not be big enough.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I would recommend we probably look at that later on.
Individual
If they
basis.
come, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
I have one comment or clarification. I just want to make, it seems like there's been some misunderstanding on what this ordinance was put in or might be put into place for. Without it, food trucks could come downtown, line up down the street, sell food out of the side of their trucks, correct?
No.
No.
Without it, they cannot park on Main Street at all and so.
Okay. I guess I'm looking at it as a way to also protect the business, the food businesses that are downtown.
And I think the best protection you can put in place to do that is probably by saying that the food truck has to be hosted.
Sure.
And it has to be in front of the business.
Okay.
Just like I just mentioned Alderman Fulton, as you go north, the first part of Main Street has no parking on it. And then it's very limited parking as you go further up north. I think they have 2 spots maybe in front of Follies. Then there's probably 3 spots behind. There's 2 in front of Follies, and there's 3 or 4 in front of Giada's. Then you jump up to the hair salon, there's 1 spot, and there's 2 in front of the deli. So, most of those folks have no need to host a food truck. Of course, Follies does, hair salon not. And then on the other side of the street, there's limited parking there. So I think that's, from what we talked about, Mr. Wolf, Mr. Powell, and myself, that's about the best way to protect it is say, hey, it's got to be in a spot in front of your business and it has to be hosted.
Gotcha.
So otherwise, if it was just wide open that you could park in any spot on Main Street without being hosted and you don't restrict it to 1. So for instance, Follies couldn't have 2. Even though they have 2 spaces, they can only have 1. But if you didn't restrict it to 1 and you didn't restrict it to the space in front of a business and them hosting, I have a feeling you would be right. You could have food trucks lined up every weekend. That's not the intention of it. I mean, I think the intention is so that Kernersville Brewery, if Polly's wants to go in conjunction with someone across the street and do something, I don't know the bridal place, whatever, Magnolia, they could do a retail truck there with some brides and bride stuff, gowns, whatever you call that. Something like that. The intention is to restrict it though to where it's not just flooding Main Street.
Right.
And Main Street is the only street in town that I can think of that this would apply to because I don't know of any other streets that have on-street parking.
Gotcha. And I guess my opinion, of course, it's my opinion, would be that those seeking out a food truck meal are not the same ones they're going to be searching out the dine-in restaurants that are downtown as well. So it's a little bit different clientele. So I guess I'm trying to assure the small business, the small restaurants, the dine-in restaurants, that it's not that this is meant to take business away from them, but just to give other options, and help other business owners downtown.
From what I have seen, and this is kind of my opinion, but from what I've seen, it is, and it's just like the young lady mentioned. I mean, it's the folks that are there at Follies or at KBC. They're really not going anywhere else, but if they want something to eat, they'll go out and get the food truck. But I agree. I don't think it will take away from any of the other restaurants downtown. And in fact, I might could see it in a sense bringing some folks downtown that may otherwise not get there and not know there's a restaurant there. So, I mean, that's just kind of my opinion, but I don't know. I know there's a lot of folks that will go to a food truck, as witnessed by the event a couple of Sundays ago. But I don't think it is. I don't think it's the same clientele by and large.
Okay, thanks. Madam Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve.
I'd like to ask a question. I think we're focusing on food trucks, but the description says to allow food trucks and mobile retail vendors. And I know they're hosted by a business that has there, but I think we could get all kinds of sales opportunities with these vehicles coming in that would compete with our businesses, even though they may be hosted. And I could see a business that is not a food business wanting to create more foot traffic in their part of town and inviting a food truck in just to get more people in front of them. Coming in tonight at about 6:30, coming down North Main, nearly every parking spot was full. And I'm not sure where they were doing business with, but our on-street parking was very full. I'm sympathetic to the brick and mortar, and I read Mr. Cashin's letter. I read Mr. Nicoletti's letter, and I think we need to protect the businesses, particularly restaurants, because they've had a hard way to go, particularly in the last year and a half with the pandemic, that they've invested in upfitting their properties, as have the Follies and other businesses. But I think we need to protect the potential customers of the businesses. And so I'm not in favor of it. I'd like to at least go on record on that.
I am in favor. And the reason that I made the motion last week or last month and didn't get a second with it is during the pandemic, and small business owners have hustled and did everything they could to open up their business and to bring business to it. And if you have a food truck that's hosted for that particular business, they can bring in any type that they want to of their discretion, and it gives the owners of that business the right to run their business. It's not our responsibility to tell our store owners and business retailers how to run their business. It's up to us to help them and to make sure that it's done in a safe manner. So I think allowing our stores and retailers to have a truck in front of their business that they represent is not going to hamper any of the other restaurants, because people are coming to that store and they can have different types of food or showcase things that benefit their actual business. So I'm certainly in favor of it.
Are there any additional comments? All right, Chris, you had started to make a motion.
Motion to approve.
I've got a motion to approve by Alderman Thompson. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Alderman Crews. All in favor? Thank you. All opposed? Alderman Boyer in opposition. When does the ordinance go into effect? Okay. All right. Print it. All right. further on this? Again, a good discussion, a lot of different points of view, and I mean, this was a lot of discussion, a lot of good discussion. The zoning cases and this. Let's see what else we have on the agenda. All right. I don't think this one will be as interesting, but maybe. We're on to E, consideration of an ordinance for budget amendment number 7 for fiscal year 2021. Mr. Swisher?
Madam Mayor and Board, you have in front of you budget amendment number 7. It's a fairly straightforward budget amendment. We have 2 large increases in line items, the largest of those being number 4, increase in general services for $252,500 to cover an increase in cost for the demolition of the Average Creek wastewater treatment plant. Good news is we have an offsetting revenue for that. The other one is the increase in the recreation department for $100,000 in the cost of the Kernersville Lake Dam repair project. Bad news is there's no offsetting revenue for that one, so that's just $100,000. We also budgeted, in addition to that $100,000, we budgeted $200,000 in the budget this year for that. As with most work, it's just costing more to get it done. So there were some more things to do to it as well. So we have to do that work. We don't have a whole lot of option there. The other increases in the engineering department, we're recommending bringing in a part-time surveyor. We have several pieces of property we need to get surveyed, rights of way and so forth. That part-time surveyor will be our former full-time surveyor, Mr. Steve Bowers. Most of you probably know Steve. He was here about 41 years. He just couldn't stay away. So he's going to come back part-time, do a little work for us. And then the last one in the inspections department, we are in dire need of a part-time inspector. That's a good problem to have. That means we've got a lot of building going on and a vehicle. So that vehicle's in the CIP. We're recommending both of those. In the budget amendment, there is an offsetting increase in revenue from the inspections department to cover that. So be glad to answer any questions regarding those 4 that the board may have.
Well, that is a very good and interesting budget amendment. So, but not as high a level of public interest and comment, I think, as some of the other matters we've heard tonight. So are there any questions? We all heard about these items as they were happening, and it was, of course, briefly touched on at the briefing last week.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
So when Steve retired, he got to keep his equipment, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
So we won't have any equipment costs. He can bring his equipment
He's
back.
going to bring it on back. We almost had the same office to give him, but we've kind of worked around, and we've got some folks from IT in his old office now, so we can't put him back over there, but we'll find him somewhere to sit. Yeah, he's probably going to do most of it from home. Just come by here.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion by Alderman Thompson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alderman Boyer. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right. Item F is consideration of an update to the residency requirement and take-home vehicle policy for law enforcement officers. Mr. Swisher?
Madam Mayor and Board, this is something that Chief Summers and I have been discussing for some time now. As I told you at the briefing, we're having a difficult time hiring police officers. That does not get any easier, especially qualified officers. So, we've talked about changing our residency requirement and take-home vehicles. Currently, our residency requirement is 30 miles. And that was put in place some time ago when we did not have as many officers on the street. We thought, well, we need them closer so we can call them back. That's not necessarily the case now. Really, all we need them to be able to do now is get here on time for their shift. If they can do that, we generally have enough folks on duty and enough folks that do live closer by that we can call back their own call. So we're recommending eliminating the residency requirement. As far as the take-home car goes, it's currently 13 miles right now. The jurisdictions around us, they've changed their take-home car policies, where it's basically, they let you drive into bordering counties instead of a set amount. So we're recommending increasing ours from 13 miles to 30 miles. We think this will help. It does put some more miles on the car, but it also allows the car to be kept in a little better condition, so forth. You're not having to leave it parked in some random place. Of course, we approve those places, but the car is still sitting there with no one in it. So we're requesting and asking the board to increase the take-home car to 30 miles and eliminate the residence requirement. Be glad to answer any questions you might have. Chief Summers is here. He can answer any as well.
All right, are there any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion by Alderman Crews.
And I'll second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Fulton. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, item G, consideration of an amendment to an employment agreement with the town manager and an ordinance setting the town manager's compensation for fiscal year 2021-22. Mr. Wolf, would you like to cover this?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor and board, you directed at your closed session of last week that Ed and I take the matters which you decided and put those into an ordinance, and you have that in front of you tonight. I will make mention of the fact that one thing was left out from that closed session, and that was issuance of a cell phone for the town business for which the town shall pay the monthly service charges. I think that was inadvertently left out of the discussion last week. If I contributed to that, I apologize to you. I have inserted that in this ordinance that Ed and I drafted. We also drafted an amendment to Mr. Swisher's employment agreement. That employment agreement goes back to 2008, and it has been brought up to date each year by way of an amendment. The amendment to his employment agreement follows identically the ordinance that we prepared and you have in front of you, including the cell phone inclusion. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any comments by the board?
You're not going to change your number to keep me from calling you, are you?
I wouldn't dare.
Curtis, you're doing an excellent job as town manager, and we're delighted that we have renewed the contract with you. So, and to Kenny's point, one of the things we appreciate is that you stay available for our questions and concerns, and to help direct staff as to solving problems that come up. Basically, when you're out of town, when you ever do get to slip away for a family vacation, early in the morning, late at night, weekends, weekdays, and we do appreciate your initiative in bringing ideas to the town of Kernersville, your expertise as a town manager, and your attention to detail in your service. So, and definitely your commitment to the community. So we thank you, and are happy to renew your contract. Does anyone else have any comments? Joe or Bruce?
We are very pleased, and I think we're very fortunate to have a town manager that has lived in this community his whole life. And so he knows the community extremely well and gives really good service to us, and we think he gives good service to the citizens.
I just have a question. Do we need, Mr. Wolf, since it's two different documents, do you want two different motions, or will one cover it?
On this, I would like two motions, one for the ordinance itself and then the contract.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, Chris or Kenny, anything else? Okay.
Thanks,
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd just like to thank Curtis too. He's the only man in Kernersville, the only mayor that's ever did foot patrol. He's out before breakfast on his feet, checking out the city to make sure it's safe for travel. So thank you, Curtis.
Well, Kenny, it depends on what time you call breakfast, probably. Definitely not out that early all the time, but I'd just like to thank the board for renewing my contract and the new salary. So, you know, I enjoy working for you greatly. Enjoy working for the town. You all make my job easy, and you know, I got to thank the staff that's still here sitting out in the audience, all the department heads. They really make my job easy. Got a great staff, great group to work with, and you know, all the way down, from you all the way down to the department heads and all the staff here at the town. You know, I tell everybody I'd be willing to put up, and not just the department heads, but everybody, but I work with the department heads obviously more closely. But, you know, I would take this group of department heads and put them up against any group of department heads in the state, anywhere in the country for that matter. And I've often told folks, you know, for many years ago, Washington was so screwed up they couldn't find their way out of D.C. And I told them, I said, you know, all it would take is about 10 folks that we have here in Kernersville when you go to D.C. and probably clean up the mess. But, you know, it's a great group of folks to work with, and you're a great group of folks to work for. And I certainly do appreciate it. And, you know, it's one of those jobs where if you enjoy it, it's not work, and I certainly enjoy it. And look forward to many more years, hopefully, and get out of here one day, but hopefully not anytime too soon. I may not be running before breakfast when my time here ends, but maybe before lunch at that point.
Thank you, Curtis. Mayor Pro Tem Fulton?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion to approve the new town manager compensation.
And that's the ordinance?
Yes, ma'am. The ordinance, yep.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
And I'll make the motion for the employment agreement as well.
I have a motion to approve the amendment to the employment agreement and a second from Alderman Thompson. Okay. Do you got that? Jenny made the motion, Chris the second. Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are to the consent agenda. All of the following matters are considered to be routine by the Board of Aldermen and will be enacted by one motion, with no separate discussion unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the matter will be removed from the consent agenda and considered under the following item: approval of minutes for the March 31 briefing, approval of minutes for the March 31, that was item A, approval of minutes for the March 31 briefing, item B, approval of minutes for the March 31 closed session, item C, approval of minutes for the April 6 regular meeting, item D, approval of minutes for the April 6 closed session. Is there anyone who'd like to see any of these minutes be removed from the consent agenda? Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve items 3A, B, C, and D.
Got a motion from Alderman Thompson, a second. Second from Alderman Boyer. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, our next item is speakers from the floor. Is there anyone who'd like to address the board on a non-agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move on. The town manager's report. Mr. Swisher.
Madam Mayor, I told you at the briefing I wouldn't have anything, but it appears as though I do have two brief items. The first of those is an ordinance declaring road closure for the 4th of July parade and fireworks. We have not had that on the agenda, so we need to get the board to approve that ordinance so we can close the road for the parade and then for the fireworks. It's the same roads that we've closed for however many years. The parade will be from 8 a.m. to noon on July the 3rd, and the fireworks will be from 6:15 to 9:30 on July the 4th. We may have to vary the one with the parade just slightly depending on the time of the 5K, but it won't be much different. So if the board will approve that ordinance declaring those road closures, we will get that sent in to DOT.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A motion by Alderman Boyer. Do I have a second? Second. Got a second from Alderman Pinnix. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
The other item, Madam Mayor and Board, is the town owns some property at 1815 Tig Lane. It's about 5 acres, more or less, The board purchased that several years ago for the possibility of a new fire station to relocate Station 44 that's currently there. And the house on Tig Lane, the plan was to relocate that station to this 5-acre tract. It's right really at the intersection of Tig Lane and Hitchcock Road. We have that property right there for that purpose. There's been an offer made by BOMA, North Carolina LLC, to purchase that property for $230,000. That is the appraised value of that property. They need to purchase the property, and they need to purchase the property pretty quickly. The problem with that is, and I'm going to recommend to the board tonight, that we do not sell that property just yet. Reason being is until the agreement with Beeson's Crossroads Fire Department is finalized, we might still need the property if something happens and they can't get a loan, or for whatever reason the deal falls through and we don't go into that fire station. We may need to fall back on this 5 acres of property and build a fire station there. So I told the folks that, Mr. Powell and Mr. Wolf and myself had a Zoom meeting with them, and we told them we're not going to recommend to the board to sell the property until we know. However, I guess they thought they still wanted to make an offer on it. So we told them we'd bring the offer to you. So you have an offer to purchase the property for $230,000. My recommendation to the board, and I think it'll be the recommendation of Mr. Wolf and Mr. Powell as well, is that you do not accept this offer. Reason being, again, if we accept it and we sell it, we've sold 5 acres for $230,000. Then we need 5 acres and we have to go buy it. It might cost you, $350,000 for 5 acres. So you've sold 5 acres and you can't replace it for what you sold it for, and you still need it. I would advise to hang on to what you have until you know whether or not you need it. If you decide not to sell it, just as soon as we finalize a deal with Beeson's and we know that we will be in that station, I will be more than glad to come back and recommend to you to sell the property. You certainly can vote to sell it tonight, and we'll sign the contract and start the sale. But again, I would recommend not doing it, but that's just my advice to you. Be glad to answer any questions the board may have regarding the offer or the property.
Can I have the address real quick?
To not accept the offer or to accept the offer, one or the other. Yes, ma'am.
What's that address?
It says on here, I don't know that it's, I didn't even know it had an address.
I don't have anything in front of me with any of that on it.
It says 1815 Tig Lane.
1815.
Yeah, and there used to be a house on it, so I guess it does have an address.
Thank you.
What kind of time frame are you looking at to where we'll know whether we want to sell it or not?
I don't know. And I told Miss Joyce with BOMA LLC, I told her that today. I would hope that, Beeson's could finalize something within the next few weeks. If they can't, and then we have to change the agreement with them to where maybe we get the money into, however, that can take a lot longer. So if everything works as we hope and Beeson's goes out and they get the money and they lock in a loan, we're good to go just as soon as they do that. I mean, if they did that this week, I would probably come back to the board next month and say, hey, recommend selling this piece of property. We may get the property reappraised. It was appraised in December of 2020. My guess is it's probably increased in value since December of 2020. So in between that time, we may get it reappraised and see. But I would hope that, we can know something by June. But I'm not going to guarantee it.
Okay, you said the price was $230,000, right?
$230,000, yes,
for the
ma'am.
appraisal, but I just pulled up the Geodata Explorer and it says total appraised land value $241,600.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was appraised before the revaluation took place. That's why I say it probably has increased in value.
5.46.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would probably be a good idea to get it reappraised.
Yeah. So the offer is $230,000, which is below tax value.
Yes, ma'am. But it is appraised value.
Okay.
From
gotcha.
December, from whenever we had it appraised, which I think was December of 2020, I believe.
Well, it looks like it was purchased in April 23rd, 2012 for $185, and Geodata Explorer's got it at $241,600.
So we made money on it.
Yeah, there you go. I'm with you. Go, Kenny.
I'll make a motion to follow Curtis's advice and not sell it at this time. The land's not going down. So we can only lose unless something comes up that we don't need the property and disaster strikes. But with all the construction going on out there, I think the property is really going to increase. And as it does, if we don't get the deal with Beeson Crossroad, we're going to definitely have to do it. So I'd like to make that motion that we follow Curtis's idea and have him be in charge of getting back to us with sale or not.
I second that.
Okay, we've got a motion by Alderman Crews, a second by Alderman Pinnix. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
And I have nothing else. Oh, yeah, I do too. Good thing these two guys back here keeping me straight. I told them better stay straight tonight and not be picking on me. I think you all have a letter to the General Assembly regarding Senate Bill 349 and House Bill 401. That is the bill that we discussed with you all that proposes to allow duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and so forth to be built on any single-family residential lot, regardless of the zoning. Of course, it'd be single-family. You have that letter in your packet. If the board is okay with that letter, we will put a signature line on it, signature line for the mayor, and put it on the letterhead and send that off to the General Assembly. Especially our representatives will do that tomorrow, if you all are in favor of that. Yes, sir, please.
I'll make the motion to approve the letter for Curtis to send to the.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Alderman Crews, second by Alderman Boyer. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Anything?
Now I'm done. I don't know about these two birds.
All right, then we are on to item 7, matters to be presented by the town attorney. Mr. Wolf? Excuse me, Curtis, could you hand him a microphone?
I just didn't pick it up. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
I said I don't really have, I just have one very small matter. Kenny probably knows this. The rest of you may not. It's a very special day today. Do you know what day it is, Curtis? In your area, it is. It's Star Wars Day.
May the 4th be with you, John.
That's exactly right. It's the 4th of May. May the 4th. Now you confuse me.
You feel like Captain Kirk?
Is that right? May the 4th.
Do you know what tomorrow is? You know what tomorrow is? There you go. You're on top of it. I'll leave you alone.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Powell? Thank you. All right, matters to be presented by the mayor and board of aldermen. Alderman Thompson, would you like to start?
I do. I want to thank Ernie Pages for his help out at Old Kernersville Lake Park. There's about 4 citizens at the very end of Old Kernersville Lake Park that have had a major beaver issue. I'm not sure. I think they've caught about 9 of them at this point.
Mr. Thompson, I'd like to call on Mr. Will May. He can come up and address that for you.
Okay, good.
No, he can't. I'm just kidding. He's not started his new job yet, but I told him I was going to call on him tonight to come up and answer something related to Parks and Rec. And for those of y'all, I hate to interrupt you, but for those of y'all that don't know, Will Mabe is taking David Largen's place in Parks and Recreation, so he'll be out chasing the beavers on Friday.
That's great. Welcome, Will. There's a lot of work that needs to be done back there, but Ernie's gotten wildlife involved. He's been down there. And I don't know if Curtis has been down there. Of course, I've been down there several times, but it seems like things are getting better, but there's still a lot of work to do down there. But Ernie's worked hard with the wildlife department to get it handled. Thank you.
And for Chris didn't tell the whole thing. I mean, these beavers aren't little beavers. I mean, one of them is the size of a Labrador retriever, just about. Chris sent me a picture of it climbing on the tree. I mean, the things are huge, and they really are. They're causing a problem, especially on that lady's property and the adjacent property, and last time even over into Branchwood, it was backing up, and I mean it's huge. But they have gotten 3 or 4, and I think they saw 3 more today. So I have no idea how many of them are out there, but they definitely have ganged up in that one area.
They've done a lot of damage back there too. I mean,
They
they're taking trees down that are probably 1.5 feet in diameter. I never really knew what wonderful engineers they were. They're amazing. It's amazing what they built back there.
Oh, they can do some damage. We'll be out in waders and rubber boots on Friday, assessing the situation.
Thank you. Mr. Crews?
I don't have anything else this evening. If anybody in the audience can beat the conversations we've heard tonight before we leave, please stand up and make yourself known.
Mayor Pro Tem Fulton?
Mayor, I just have a couple of things. Mr. Hatling, what is going on with the property located at 308 East Mountain Street? I get asked about that property on a daily basis. That would be the Brewer's Kettle. Can you address? I know he took down siding and it's up, but now it looks worse. So, I mean, I just need some guidance and understand what's going on.
Brewer's Kettle is coming into compliance by removing their metal facade.
But they don't have to move the garage doors?
No.
But I don't think they've removed all of their metal siding yet either.
They took it up like 6 feet and they've left the rest of it. So we're fining him every day since April 27th?
We're not finding him as long as he continues to remove.
What's the timeline? I mean, we have citizens who are getting very impatient with this situation.
I'll have to get back to you on the timeline.
That'd be great. Okay, then the other thing is, we spoke, I think, last week about on your letters that go out, warnings. Wasn't that you or was that public service? Where it looked like call us. There was not a contact. I spoke to Mike Horning. I think I mentioned that to you.
They took that information off the letters.
Okay, so that's been corrected.
Yes.
Okay. Will you send me a copy of kind of your standard on that? And Doran, I'm so sorry I kept Wendy here for a little while. I don't know, Mayor, who to address this to, but I've met with several citizens over water. And I mentioned it to Mr. Wolf today that there are some water issues with older subdivisions. And so Wendy was so great, and she has done a lot of research with possibility of how we can legally or, help, some of these older subdivisions. And we met with a gentleman over at Oak Forest, Wendy and I did, and I thought he was going to come tonight, so maybe something happened. But maybe an engineer study of a water to figure out. So I don't know how we need to start that or what needs to happen, but I was over there several times, and I told him, I said, well, the water will end up going to Curtis's house behind the Y, and he's already got a big thing. So maybe an engineer study would help that whole area. So I don't know what to do. So I do, but I would like to be addressed and not say, oh, we just don't do that, because at this point we've got to at least try to do something. And I know Wendy had done a lot of research, and there was some local municipalities within the state that was finding a way to help the older developments. Doran, kind of on the right page there? Yes, please.
There's actually only one city that has,
Second, I don't think we can hear you. Is the mic on?
yes,
Okay.
I think there's only one city that actually has the right to do whatever they want, and that's Charlotte. But there's been a general statute specific just to Charlotte. So they can work out of the right of way, but other towns and cities, they have different programs of cost sharing, but it's really minimal compared to the number of municipalities there are in the state. There's only a few, handful maybe.
But there are a few that are being able to do a little stuff, right?
Yes. And every one of those have cost sharing where it has to meet certain criteria.
Sure.
And then the property owner has to pay 50% or something.
Okay.
And like Winston, I think they basically eliminated theirs because none of their citizens were willing to pay or could pay the cost of these programs.
I totally get it. And the gentleman I spoke to is a veteran. He served our country. He lives in Kernersville. And it just breaks my heart. So I would like to see something that, I don't know what we can do, Curtis, or Doran. I mean, if we can just keep looking a little bit further, trying to maybe find an opportunity to help, maybe a certain criteria. Maybe it's an elderly couple on a fixed income. Maybe it's for a short amount of time. You have 12 months, right? We do a public notice. I don't know. I'm just thinking, and I'll be more than happy to meet with you. But water is a big concern. And then when I went out there and I met with our veteran, I was like, okay, I've got to bring it up. We got to try and do something.
Well, if you wanted to use that one as a specific example, we first have to know what exactly is the problem, which would require a
engineer study.
We have done some work there. We've done some things in-house and within the right-of-way that we can do to try to help solve the problem, but it's not. And the problem is most of this water is actually behind their house. It's not being discharged from the road.
I guess Wendy went over what we saw this week out there, or last week.
And
it was yesterday, right? When it poured down rain.
Yes.
I can't keep up.
And I think there's a summary. You have a copy of it, don't you, Curtis? That Wendy wrote you last year that tells the details of everything that's going on over the years. But again, to find out what the real problem is would require an engineering study.
Okay. Well, I think that area and that area behind the Y, it might be helpful. So I don't know what I need to do or what we need to do.
Well, and I think you've got some different situations. For instance, behind my house, it's pretty obvious. I live at the bottom of a hill, and it's all going to run down there. I knew it when I bought the house. The gentleman in Branchwood that continues to complain about water, whether he wants to accept the facts or not, he lives at the bottom of a hill. There was 13 acres that used to be woods that got cleared off. Whether they built anything on that 13 acres or not, once they cleared the trees off, that water is going to run exactly where it is supposed to run, and that's right down behind his house to the creek. So some of these situations we really shouldn't address because the water is going where it is supposed to go. In my house, I got Cokesbury coming right down the hill. Got Marietta coming right down the hill. It's all going to the pipe in my backyard that goes under the road. I knew that when I bought the house. Mr. Martin knew that when he bought his house in Branchwood, however many years ago. Now, he won't admit that, obviously. He wants to get into the fact that the pipe's undersized and the town put in the pipe and all of this and that, but all that's irrelevant. The water's going where it's designed to go. So do we go out and help folks that the water's going where it is supposed to go?
Well, the way Wendy explained this certain situation is part of that was developed, and then, many years later, the next developer came in and did the second part of the road, Oak Forest, and it was not done accurately for the water flow. So it would need an engineer study.
And in that particular situation, there may be something we can do.
Okay.
But in a lot of
that's
them,
the one I'm concerned about.
in a lot of them, I don't
at this time
know that we can.
Right.
Or that we should.
Right. Well, Wendy went out there, and we were talking out in the lobby. It's like 28% high, and she was using terminology that I don't know, higher than it's supposed to be. Like it's supposed to stay around 40 and it's at 68%.
Yeah.
So, and she said the only way to solve that needs to be looked at would be an engineer study to find a solution. And it's because it's an older development. But yes, Mr. Martin and I talked, and I know all about Lake Drive. How many times did we go out there together, Doran, with the builder and the developer?
More than I can count.
Me too. But this is a serious situation at Oak Forest, and I would like to figure out how to get that looked at. And then the only other thing is, Jeff, Mr. Hatling, I got a phone call about property. Thank you, Doran. Property out there at Mesa Grove Road and the new development where all this discussion's coming with developing, food line going over there and all this. So is that all set up for a business park? Is that the plan to have a business park on that side of town?
When prior to Mesa Grove opening up, we did a area plan out there that was adopted by the Board of Aldermen maybe 2 or 3 years ago, before I get lost in time. But there's 4 large tracts on the west side of North Main Street where the county line convenience store is. Those are designated as a business park section.
They're zoned business park right now.
The zoning is, the land use plan is designated as a business park. The zoning is RS20.
It's not agriculture.
Correct.
And so the land use plan says make it a business park.
Yes.
So if somebody was interested in doing like storage units and a restaurant and all of that, it would not fit in a business park. It would have to be a retail.
Especially, I think, after the food line case, now we really want to try to encourage the food line to infill. We also have the property in the northeast corner of County Line Road and North Main Street is open for commercial. So now you have two sections already open for commercial. And I know there's, staff and some other members are concerned about our older section of North Main Street. So the last thing you want to do is open up more commercial up in that northern end of North Main.
Okay, and so the Mesa Grove extension that's going to go over to what, Piney Grove Road?
Yes.
Isn't that going to go right down the middle of the 4 pieces of property you're talking about?
Yes.
So you'd have a split business park?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I've got, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Boyer? Thank you. Alderman Pinnix? All right, well, we've reached the end of our agenda. Appreciate all the staff and citizens who have stayed here till the very end. Appreciate your dedication. If there's nothing further before the board this evening, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I've got a motion from Alderman Thompson and a second from Alderman Pinnix. All those in favor? It's unanimous. This meeting is now adjourned.